Check, check. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order at 5:34 p.m. on Monday, March 2nd, 2026, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, and we will start introductions with Councilor Harriman.
Scott Harriman, City Council Representative to the School Committee.
Donna Gallant, Ward 7.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Linnea Hawkins, Ward 5.
Julia Harper, Ward 4.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Luke Jensen at large.
Phoenix McLaughlin, Ward 1.
Jake Lang, the superintendent.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. So transactions, minutes, personnel. Are there any items that members would like to see set aside? Okay, seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. So up next is public input. So members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Speakers must adhere to our public comment policy, BEDH, which is available in the back of the room or on the LPS website. These meetings exist to conduct school committee business. The purpose of public comment is to share thoughts on school and educational matters. Committee members and school staff will not reply during this time. Comments must be directed to the chair and be civil. By law, comments may not pertain to specific staff or students. Comments about individuals must be directed privately to the appropriate LPS staff. Student privacy must be maintained. The public comment period is 30 minutes unless extended due to unusual circumstances. Priority goes to Lewiston residents and parents, students, or employees of LPS. Before starting, please state your name, town or city of residence, and affiliation to LPS. Is there any general public comment to start? Go ahead.
David Rack Mills, Ward 1. I'm just a taxpayer resident of Lewiston with concerns about governance and transparency. I sent the committee an email last week on the subject of cross-district or out-of-district enrollment for the public's information. That's basically students that are enrolled in a school that doesn't match the district that they reside in. I had questions regarding current practice and what, if any, oversight was in place. The responses I got back were eyebrow raising and not at all reassuring. One of the replies indicated that there were at least 3 different reasons why an out-of-district placement might be authorized, including enrollment balancing, special programming not available at all schools, and if the student is a dependent of a school staff member. The reply I got back from the superintendent was even more startling. It indicated there had been over 450 requests this year for out-of-district placement. By my count, that's almost 20% of the K-6 population. In addition, and perhaps coincidentally, there had been just under 450 requests that fell into 2 additional categories: families residing in Lewiston requesting enrollment in neighboring districts, and families residing in neighboring districts requesting enrollment in Lewiston schools. The breakdown for these additional cases was not specified, nor was the criteria for granting such requests elaborated on. After receiving these replies, I went back to the school website to see if there was public information regarding the process, including application forms, descriptions of special programs, and criteria for judging application requests. The only thing I could find was the official policy adopted by the committee and last reviewed in 2023. It's only a few sentences long, and the only justification in that policy is that there may be situations where the superintendent will transfer students to a less crowded school or classroom in order to ensure that students have the best possible educational environment. My concern is that this process is not clearly defined for the public, including how to make a request, and if awareness of the program is primarily through word of mouth. And such a scenario would privilege families in the community who have strong existing social networks or ties to the administration. It leaves families which are more isolated in the community in the dark. Clearly, these requests are documented, or the superintendent would not have been able to so quickly quantify the scope of the issue. Also, records must be available of the actual enrollments. The school committee should give assurance to the public you're reviewing the records to ensure that the policy is being applied equitably in the community. Making the records public in a way that protects the privacy of students and their families would be even better. At some point, the policy should be adjusted to reflect the actual practice. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
Matthew Akron, Ward 4. One of the things I'd like to say is these packets, once more, are not complete. You guys are asked to vote on things that there are documents that are shared during the meetings that should be in the packets so that the public can see it's just having to be in the room in order to see them. Anything that Jake can share up on the screen should be in your packet. Otherwise, we don't know what you're voting on. It's incomplete. And that's a horrible way for you to represent the taxpayers. Horrible way for you to represent our students because they don't know what's going in. I'm also curious that when the 30-minute comment period applied to items that we are not the public comment period, but items that are on the agenda. A few weeks ago, when we were discussing flags, we ended public comment before everyone who was here got to speak on it. It says public comments 30 minutes. It doesn't say items are 30 minutes. It's never been items have been 30 minutes. Have a good night.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Good evening, members of the Lewiston School Committee. I'm writing to express deep concern for the well-being of immigrant students in our district during the recent period of the ICE surge in Lewiston. For many immigrant students and families, this period created fear, uncertainty, and emotional distress. In moments like this, schools serve not only as an educational institution, but as a place for safety. Approximately 50% of the students in our districts are immigrant or children of immigrants, which was much different from when I went to school 23 years ago, where less than 3% were immigrants. These students and families are not separate from the broader school community. They are an important part of it. They deserve the same care, reassurance, and protection as any other student. In previous moments of community crisis, the district stepped up by offering counseling services, additional emotional support, and even remote learning options. These responses communicated awareness and compassion. During this recent period, however, many families did not experience that same visible reassurance. In a moment when many students were afraid, the district's response felt neutral and absent. While some may have viewed this period as political, for many families it was deeply personal. This was not about politics, it was about student safety, emotional well-being. In a very difficult time, neutrality can feel like absent, and absence can feel like indifference. When students are distracted by fear, their ability to learn and focus becomes difficult. When families question whether their children are fully supported, trust is broken. It was also concerning to see public comment made by school committee member suggesting that immigrants depend heavily on welfare system. Regardless of their intent, such statement can reinforce harmful stereotype and make students feel targeted. School leaders set the tone for the district. Words matter, especially when spoken by those in position of authority. Dr. Martin Luther King wrote, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." In challenging times, students notice who speaks up for their safety and dignity. I respectfully urge the district to reaffirm its clear commitment to student safety and emotional well-being for all of the students, regardless of immigrant status, ensure that counseling and trauma-informed support are proactively offered during periods of crisis, develop contingency learning plans, including remote learning for students who may feel unsafe, straighten communication by proactively checking in with families. Schools cannot control national events, but they can control how they respond to how they show up for students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, point of order, the
Yeah.
last speaker did not state their name, town, residency, or affiliation to LPS.
Yes, that is a good point. My apologies for neglecting that. And yeah, please do note that for others who do wish to speak to start with that. Are there any others who would like to speak right now? And as noted, please do start with your name and residence and affiliation to LPS.
I'm Martin Chartrand. I'm a resident of Lewiston, Ward 3, and citizen of Lewiston. I also work as a behavioral health professional, so not with the district, but I work with school-age kids in the community and in their homes. And I want to echo the concerns that my neighbor just shared there. I also have been in touch with the school committee about this, and a few of you, I've appreciated, have acknowledged what I sent, because I think it is really important for kids and their emotional well-being to have support from their teachers, their school staff about what they're going through. That's a little more than just an acknowledgement and silence. And I think there's a way to do this without jumping into a debate or saying anything that's not fact-based. Because research on trauma does show that a big difference that makes whether young people can grow through it or whether they have lasting emotional harm is whether they've had support and acknowledgement from authority figures, and also whether they have had a way to act in response to it to help save themselves. And one thing that we can control are those things. We can offer tools and support to families and young people. I want to emphasize this is not over. There have been ICE arrests as recently as yesterday, and though there are not as many agents on the streets, it's still a constant fear for the immigrant community. I offered in my email a few ideas for this. I think that staff could be empowered to simply speak the facts that there are immigration agents operating. They have taken people from the immigrant community. It seems to be both according to law and outside of law. Many of the people taken are not breaking the law in any way. And there are things you can do about it. There's rights you can keep in mind, your constitutional rights. There are also a network of community supports out there to help families with things like rides and food and financial assistance in cases where there might be a breadwinner missing. And I think that probably the administration now isn't hearing all of what teachers are seeing, because teachers have been told that they're not supposed to really talk about this and they're supposed to focus on teaching. So they're not going to share those stories up the chain. So I think it is really important to give guidance that allows for teachers and staff to have some of these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is to receive Lewiston Public Schools recognition. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
So we're going to start with Principal Tiffany Sachs, who's going to come up and share a little bit about Kathy McNamara, who is being recognized as a Counselor of the Year.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Kathy McNamara. She is our school counselor, primarily for the youngest grades at Montello, but currently is supporting all of our students as our only school counselor currently. She just received a wonderful honor that I want to share with you all. She was actually through MESCA, the Maine School Counselor of the Year Award was given to her. So this is through the state, and it's part of a national program that honors school counselors who lead outstanding comprehensive counseling programs at the elementary, middle, or high school level. So she was chosen because of her commitment to supporting the academic, social, and emotional growth of all students. I have the pleasure of working with Kathy and have worked with her for quite some time. I think 2016 was the year ish that you came. So one of the things that I've appreciated deeply about Kathy is just the wisdom she has, the insight she has into the work, how she understands the difference and the layers of support we can give kids from a social emotional standpoint, what counselors do versus clinicians, and really helping us understand how both are equally important but do different work. So she's taught me a lot about her role and what that needs to look like, so that we can best support students. She does an incredible job. I appreciate Kathy's sense of humor and the way she guides with authenticity. She really, if you hear anybody talk about Kathy, they'll talk about her empathy, the way she supports students. She's just really collaborative and gives so much wisdom to the work. So I'm here to say congratulations to Kathy again. We got to see each other. Also, we did a surprise assembly at Montello, and then which was very exciting. I couldn't tell staff until the day of because I didn't want the surprise to be outed, but we did it successfully. And then we also got to meet together at the Hall of Flags in Augusta, right, that same week. And so today I'm recognizing her in front of you all, and it just happens to be International SEL Day as well. So good timing. I'm glad this was rescheduled. It fits perfectly. So Kathy has a few words for you all, but I just wanted to say again, congratulations, Kathy. You're well deserving of the honor.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to celebrate this award. I was humbled to learn about this nomination back in October. My time as a school counselor has given me a deep appreciation for the relationships that get built over time with students, families, and other educators. Being a recipient of the Maine School Counselor of the Year Award is a culmination of collaborative work with all of these groups. It's not work done in isolation. I am deeply grateful to be part of Lewiston Public Schools and will be a vocal advocate for school counselors locally and statewide. Thank you very much.
So Kathy, we have a certificate for you, but I also want to share a little bit because I gave the school committee just a touch of this before, but we're also waiting for her state recognition formally in Augusta. So we went to this assembly that Tiffany helped organize, and there were hundreds of kids in the gym and staff. And the guest speaker who was presenting the award asked people in the crowd, while one of Kathy's daughters was there, and she had her sister on FaceTime. So she was holding it up so they could see it. And Kathy was putting the pieces together, like, why is my daughter here and why is she on FaceTime? But one of the questions, or a series of questions that I feel were really meaningful were, how many kids here feel like your lives are better because of your work with Miss Kathy? And hundreds of kids put their hands up. And then she added staff, so kids and staff, and half the staff put their hands up. I think the other half were just redirecting kids, but I think it speaks to, Kathy, your consistent effort around our schools, especially Montello, and the work you do there, but not just there, but also with counselors and other schools as you try to help guide them professionally and provide input. So really, truly thank you for all your hard work.
Do you mind just speaking into the microphone? Thank you.
So one of my colleagues, who was a close friend of mine, she looked at me and she goes, "You look nice today." And I was like, "Thank you. I did laundry." Because I really didn't know what was going on. And I saw Jake in the hallway and I thought, oh, wow, something important's going on. And then it was me. And I was like, oh, yay, I'm important. So I appreciated all of the surprises. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. So I believe that is it for recognitions right now. Okay, for tonight, yes. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 6, which is to receive and potentially vote on the field trip request to Bangor for the Skills USA State Conference.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rob Callahan. I'm the director of the Lewiston Regional Technical Center. I have my good colleague, Paul Kennedy, who is our plumbing instructor here at LRTC. And we're going to talk to you a little bit tonight about Skills USA and the annual trip that we make up to Bangor every year to compete in the Skills USA state competition. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Skills USA, it is an international career and technical student organization that provides students with an opportunity to really get connected to a career pathway of their choosing. So whether that be in healthcare or the trades or business, students have the opportunity, or actually this conference even offers things like related technical math and extemporaneous speaking, and allows students to really step outside of their comfort zone, to get to know students from around the other tech centers in the state, and to get involved in a more deep way with, like I said, a career of their choosing. It's like I call it moderate risks with our students, where they really have to put in a lot of extra time. But again, we've had some incredible success. Last year we had, I think you met two young women who won a national silver medal in emergency medical technology. 2 years ago, Mr. Kennedy had a student that finished 4th in plumbing in the United States. We'll be back to talk to you more, hopefully, about the trip to Atlanta that will happen in June to compete in the national competition. But this is really our state competition. It really allows our students, again, to have those interactions. And it, is just a fantastic way for them to really understand the trade and the profession that they're headed into. These are judges that come from professional fields, and spend time debriefing with students and helping them understand the work they've done and how significant it is. I guess I would also really like to just point out to you that 2 things make Skills USA possible: having the great students that we do, but also having the faculty that we do. When I put the call out to the faculty to say, hey, we're going to chaperone 100 students overnight away from Lewiston, Auburn. There's no extra nothing, in it for everybody. We always have a full slate. And Paul is one of our chapter advisors. He and his 2 colleagues put in a ton of hours throughout the year to maintain our chapter. One of the nice things that I'm pleased to report to you tonight is that this comes at no cost to students, that we have fundraised and we have worked to find funding from other sources, and some of it's local, so that students who want to participate in this do not have to dip into their own pockets or hit their family up. It's something that we feel strongly about. We did, for some of you I know, came and visited our car show this past summer. And again, we had faculty, we had students there that were, showing antique classic automobiles and things like that. We sold food. We had a cornhole competition, and all of those things we do through the course of the year to raise money for our chapter. So again, the brass tacks, I will turn over to Paul in a quick second. But again, this is a fantastic evening. It'll be a long day, and 2 days actually. And I think that we will look forward to bringing back some of the students to here so they can share with you directly the benefit they've had and the look forward they have to the competition in Atlanta. Paul?
Thank you. We will be bringing 95 students to Bangor to compete in 51 competitions. Those competitions are either within their trade or their skill set or their leadership competitions. All of the students will compete either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, with award ceremony being Friday night. Some of those students that receive gold medals will have the opportunity to go to the national competition in Atlanta in June and benefit themselves. I've yet to have a student go to Skills, and I've been involved with Skills for over 10 years now, and I've yet to have a student that hasn't benefited from the program, either locally at the state level or at the national level. It's a real great opportunity for students to take a moderate risk to represent themselves and their school. And we urge your support.
We open to questions. Member Bowden.
Thank you. It's not a question. I just want to commend you guys. It's always so well organized. It's safe and the kids have a lot of fun. And I know they look forward to it every year. And I only ever hear great things. Obviously, my oldest daughter was a part of it, went to nationals, and she had a blast. And my youngest was super excited to be a part of it this year. I think she got a silver. She didn't get a gold, so she's not going to Bangor. But it's just such a great competition that you guys put on, and it really showcases how talented our students are. So I really appreciate this, and I wholeheartedly support it. I don't know if anyone has any questions before I make a motion. Yeah, I'll
Member-
wait.
Yeah, Member Hurd, go ahead.
Thank you. So I agree. I feel like anytime Rob gets up here, it's always a yes. It's never a no because of the programming that you put on. And also I think there's a level, we know what to expect from you. Like Member Bowden said, it's always well organized. You guys have a lot of chaperones. There's never any issues. And, I have one of your graduates that's currently working in my house doing renovation in my bathroom. So I know what you're putting out there into the world. So do you want to make the motion? You want me to make the motion?
Was there a hand? Yeah, a question or comment? Yeah, Member Harper.
Thank you so much. This, sounds like an incredible program. I just wanted to clarify, is there any additional funding request of the school committee for this? There is not. Okay. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the field trip request to Bangor for the Skills USA State Conference.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Member Bowden, seconded by Member Hurd. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And any opposed, please raise your hand. Okay. Oh, yes.
What happened?
My apologies. Yeah, we are.
Lewiston Museum of Science that was on the earlier agenda. Has that happened in the intervening time?
Do you want to answer that? And then
Yeah,
we'll
it's
discuss
a
the voting?
it's a repeated cycle of a field trip, and so it actually doesn't require school committee approval by policy. And it's not overnight, and it's not water. Yeah.
So yeah, my apologies. I was corrected by my fellow members here. We're about to discuss this with the procedural rules, but we did address moving to roll call voting, and we should do that. Last time, I believe we started with Councilor Harriman. We also agreed that we would rotate. So I believe that means we'll start now with Member Gallant for this evening. So, just a yay or nay, starting with Member Gallant and moving this way.
Yes.
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 Okay, it is unanimous.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your patience.
Thank you.
Yes, have fun. Okay, so up next is to review and potentially vote on procedural rules. Do you want to kick this off, Superintendent?
Yeah, so every year, the school committee, well, actually at any point in time, can review its own procedural rules. So these are rules that speak to the practices you want to use to conduct your meetings. And the standing is that these cover areas where it might be more preference, but it doesn't necessarily align to charter or Robert's Rules of Order. So typically legally we follow charter, state law, and Robert's Rules of Order for procedures. And on occasion, there are some local preferences like roll call, things like that you can put in. And so there's a list of items here in this document for your review.
Member Bowden.
Thank you. So I have a few notes, but I'm going to start with, I find it strange, some of the wording, instead of using just shall or must, we're using like typically and normally. I think one of the first sentences, where it says, or in number 2, school committees shall typically begin at 5:30 p.m. I just don't understand why we're using the word typically, like it shall begin at 5:30 p.m.
These are edits to last year's document, so that language must have existed then for some reason. So we can clarify it. if
That's fine. It just seems like I don't know. It just seems like for like a formal vote, if we're gonna be okay. These procedural rules, correct me if I'm wrong here. Thank you. It's so tough because I've got notes up, but like switching from screen to screen is a little, so I appreciate that you printed these out tonight. Our procedural rules don't say anything about public comment. Am I wrong here?
That's in policy.
It is.
That's my recollection as well. Did you want to?
Is it because it's in policy?
Yeah.
that we don't have anything in here about it?
Public comment is because it's a public meeting, part of law.
Okay.
The constructs of the public comment are your discretion to an extent.
Is there something you're hoping to address?
Well, kind of. I don't think the way that we have the public comment thing worded, I know we went over this in great length, like with the last committee, the way that it's all worded out. We getting here? This is all policy though?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the public comment language that Phoenix, the chair reads to start the meeting, or
Yeah.
that section, that language is in policy.
Okay.
My recollection.
All right. So none of that will be in our procedural rules then.
We can bring it to policy committee.
Member Heard?
You. But in number 12, it alludes to public comment and it says chair may set guidelines in time for public comment, after which public comment will cease and the committee will fully deliberate and consider any action. So like, you know, but do you get what I'm saying? Kind of like, should we add like the language? Should we put 30 minutes? Because we have a timeline for public comment. So either do it or nix it, I think is probably the best maybe.
I could just ask, I mean, Member Bowden, was there something in particular you wanted to?
No, I think it's more, I think it's more of a policy thing then. But it was
Okay.
brought up tonight that we probably should have a time on limit on our agenda item public comments.
Yeah, we can take that up at policy.
I don't know if that's a policy thing or if that is a procedural thing for us.
Just as a side, I would say that there's lots of districts in Maine that have very little procedural rules or none at all, and they just depend on policy, charter, and state language. So
Okay.
I have seen an evolution in the procedural rules here in Lewiston, where 15 years ago there was a ton of rules, and then it scaled to almost none, and then it's gone back and forth based on some different experiences, I'll say.
Okay, that is it for now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, with regards specifically to the timeline, I mean, there is, with that type of thing, there can be typically, that's the chair that can, end comment at a certain time or not, but there can be a good reason to have that spelled out, in any case. Are there other thoughts or comments on, actually, while we're on that subject though, I think I had also, it's also come up before, I think, with some members. This has come up just in private conversations and elsewhere, just, this question of civility during public comment and if and how we can address that, should address that. Obviously, there's a lot of legal kind of constraints as a public meeting, what we have to allow. But given that, again, there is a policy around public comment, maybe that's more the appropriate place for that. Member Eames?
I also noticed the wording here, the committee will fully deliberate and consider any action. That implies that we're taking up what the public suggested right then. And I don't think that is what this language should tell us. So public comment will cease and the committee will fully deliberate, period. Like it's not about what they said, we're having our meeting. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I would suggest we get rid of and consider any action.
Well, this might raise the point. I'm curious if you have input on this as well, that for something like public comment, which is spelled out more in a policy, should we just not mention it in
That would
procedural
be my
rules? Like if we're
preference,
not
but-
adding anything substantive in this document, then maybe we just remove that. How do people feel about that? I mean, is there anything in item number 12 that you feel we would be wrong to miss? Okay, so when it comes time for a motion on this, I might suggest that we just amend that part and just say that, striking number 12
Mhm.
from the procedural rule draft. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Other thoughts on procedural rules? Yeah, Member Harper.
Do we have to make a motion for things to go to policy committee for, like, if folks are gonna look again at the public comment rules and maybe consider civility related pieces, or,
Member Eames.
We have a regular rotating schedule for considering policy issues. If we want to go around that, change that, go out of order, then we might need a motion or a suggestion or an action item, but we do regularly address all these issues. This one, it seems like maybe we should just every year take a look at public comment. And I'm talking as if I'm on that committee. We don't know who's on what committee yet.
Any other, yeah, Member Eames.
I just am happy that this version has incorporated the things we talked about at the earlier meeting. So thank you for that. I'm curious why we have voted by school committee and then insert date approved, like why that bit at the end is unclear to me.
It's just template, and I just,
Okay.
when the committee adopts, we would put that in. just
Okay.
for reference. Yeah.
Thanks.
Member Hurd.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the procedural rules of the Lewiston School Committee for period, today's date? March 2nd, 2026 through December 31st of 2026 with the amendment that we strike number 12 from the procedural rules.
I'll second that.
Okay. Were you gonna say something?
Just a clarification that I did have in the notes from this discussion to clean up language around typically and normally. Are you also adding that in the motion? Because I can take it out. I just want to make sure.
Yes, I will add that in the motion.
And I will second with that amendment.
Member Eames, were you gonna add something?
Just move typically to 5 p.m. and typically end at 8:30, because I don't think we can promise that we'll end at 8:30. We can promise that
Yeah.
we'll begin at 5:30.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Member Harper.
I just had one other, it's for small edit, but it says number 6 under subcommittees. I think instead of budget, the committee is finance. Is that right? Small,
Yes,
small change.
I believe it is. Thank you. You got that? Okay, so the motion is to approve the procedural rules as amended, as we discussed. Moved by Member Hurd, seconded by Member Bowden. Is there any further discussion, questions, thoughts, comments before we vote? Okay, so we will use a roll call vote, beginning with Member Gallant.
Yes.
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 Okay, the vote is unanimous. So the procedural rules are adopted. I should note that it's mentioned in here and in policy, actually, that we shall have a parliamentarian. And so I don't want to do the whole appointment and vote on that right at this second, because I wasn't sure if we would have any discussion around that, but I'll, actually, I should say, I mean, if anyone is interested in being the parliamentarian and the legislative liaison in particular, please let me know, because that is spelled out as something that we'll appoint. So just, you can let me know now, you can let me know later. The parliamentarian we do need to vote on, the legislative liaison we don't need to vote on. And so we can have that. I think we will vote on the parliamentarian hopefully by the next time if someone is interested. And the legislative liaison, we can also discuss by that point. Member Bowden?
Sorry, I just wanted to point out procedurally that we didn't go to public comment before we voted on this. And I feel like
Yeah.
we should be going to public comment on every agenda item.
You're right. So we did just vote on it. The agenda item, though, still is open if anyone would like to speak on it. Okay. Thank you for reminding me. I appreciate that. Yes, Member Eames.
And also we can change at any time, like we
That's
voted it and we can vote it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
We could vote it again right now if we wanted to, but hopefully not. So yeah, please do follow up with me, and I'll actually reach out. If I don't hear from anybody, I will be reaching out to see who's interested in those roles. Okay, if no further input on that item, we'll move to agenda item number 8, which is to receive and potentially vote, although I think we'll discuss if we need to vote, on the submission of the Sewell Foundation application.
So Jenny Darrigan's going to come up to walk through a slideshow. And I'm going to apologize to the committee. I actually attached the wrong file. And so you should have had the slideshow and not the document that we talked about the language of, which was my mistake, which thank you, Member Bowden, for pointing that out to me. So that one's on me and I apologize. So we have a different file here that Jenny will share, and we'll make sure that gets in the packet and is available to everyone.
And it's a different ask. It's not the same.
Correct. The document I sent is not the same ask. It's a different ask. So I own that. That's on me. I apologize.
Wonderful. Like Jacob said, my name is Jenny Darrigan. I'm the District Federal Programs Coordinator. I am coming forward tonight to speak to the application process and possible or potential submission for this Sewell grant opportunity. We are looking to apply for a 4-year grant with Sewell. They have moved from offering 1-year Lewiston Auburn grants into more of an extended period of time to 4 years. So that's sort of why that might sound like a long time and a little bit different than in years prior, but we're looking at a 4-year grant that we would be entering into if we choose to do so. And so I'd like to just share a little bit about the project we're looking to apply for and with the school committee tonight per our district policy. So interesting or uniquely to this request to apply, we are looking to continue and strengthen a project that's already up and running this past year. So I will give a little bit of information on the successes of the program and why we want to continue it. But this Sewell grant opportunity is going to be to continue a Housing Navigator project that we are currently partnering with Community Concepts this year. We started that partnership last March, and that was a pilot, preventing homelessness pilot grant through Maine Housing that has supported that work so far. So for a year now, we've been participating in that partnership with Community Concepts to provide housing assistance to LPS students and families. What that looks like is that we have a full-time staff member at Community Concepts that has a caseload of Lewiston Public School students and families and works with them directly. And that is the full-time role of that housing navigator. They are fully dedicated to serving our Lewiston Public School students. And then additionally, the Maine Housing Grant had offered some discretionary funds, which allowed our housing navigator to help with some of the barriers that our families were facing to maintain or seek and secure housing. So what we would be asking in the Sewell grant and applying for would be for 4 years, $150,000 each year to continue to pay for a full-time housing navigator to serve Lewiston Public School students, and additionally for some discretionary funding to do that work, a very necessary part of that project work. So the role of the housing navigator, I just put a few bullets there, like for accessing family housing needs, connecting families to local shelter and housing resources, guiding through application and placement processes, which is a huge part of the engagement work that our current housing navigator does so very, very well, and to collaborate with housing agencies and landlords to secure stable and permanent housing. This work has been so successful over the last year, and we'll be continuing in it through June, June 30th, with the Maine Housing funding. So again, this is to continue the good work that's already happening. So on the next slide, I just wanted to walk through and be very specific and clear about the goals so that that information was shared out with all of you. But the purpose ultimately to continue supporting our families in this way. But ultimately, our students experiencing housing instability face increased challenges with attendance and engagement. So this is not a service that the school district, the housing navigation work is not a service that the school district can provide, but that a partner can provide. So we are looking to partner with community concepts for another 4 years to do this work, this very expert work in our community. For partnership with community concepts, the outcomes is ultimately we want to see families in more stable housing situations, but we want to see increased student attendance and increased student engagement, as we know how much that affects our learning outcomes for our Lewiston Public School students. The funding source, just reiterating, I guess, here that it was from the main housing, and we would be shifting same project, continuation of project, but seeking the Sewell funds to do so. Some data to support the project continuation is that so far, so since last March, we have referred 150 families to our case, our housing navigator who has a caseload for Lewiston schools. It's always been a full caseload. So our housing navigator is working with families. And this is not a quick process, but it can vary for families, but depending on the amount of support that they need. And so when our housing navigator can move on from servicing one family, she'll start with another family. So it's very much a lot of work happening all the time to address our referrals. 138 students have been impacted to date. Several of the students come from the same family, but working with parents to secure the housing, that's our total amount of impacted students thus far to maintain or secure stable housing. The 80% success rate is just a data point for us to reflect on that 80% of our referrals that are going over end up being very successful on the housing navigation end. And again, that really involves an engagement with the parent and the housing navigator to move the steps forward. So we are referring families that we have had conversations with and know that they are ready to take those steps. And that's just one of the pieces that supports the referral and supports getting families over there that are ready to engage in that work. Lastly here, I just invite you to check out a few of the media coverages that have happened for housing navigation. Our particular project through the current grant we have it under, WGME, Sun Journal, and Maine DOE all highlighted this work, the great success that it's having, and support us in seeking funds also to continue the work in Lewiston. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there anything you need to add before we go to questions?
Other than I apologize for attaching the wrong file.
Yes.
I'm like trying to tell Karen to hit me, but she won't.
Okay. Yes, Member Hurd.
Thank you. So I do have questions about this, but for one quick second, I know you apologize for attaching the wrong document, but it's two completely different things. So like, is that something that's coming in the future for us, or like, I'm just really confused.
It's actually an old document that has the same title in my files. And so I clicked on the wrong one. So my apologies.
You're fine. You're totally fine. Okay, so I actually do have a couple questions. The current grant that we have right now, that we're using for this position, how much longer do we have that grant for? Like, what does that cover?
June 30th of this year.
Okay. And then if for some reason we don't get the Sewell grant, then we'll have to budget this position.
No.
Yes or no?
No.
No? Okay. Okay.
The project ends.
Okay, the project ends. But
The
like,
funding ends
I mean, it's clearly helping our community. And so I'm just wondering, like, I mean, we're obviously crossing our fingers and hoping we get the grant, but like, so what you would do is if we get the grant, it would just continue. Like, there's no stoppage. We're not looking for someone else to hire. We're keeping who we have now. Like, nothing really changes.
really.
Yeah, and Community Concepts has hired the housing navigator. We've partnered like as a contracted service with Community Concepts to seek their service. So they would continue to provide one full-time housing navigator to serve Lewiston Public Schools and work directly with our resource center staff who support that referral work.
Member
Is there
Glenn.
another question I overlooked?
Yes, what is the referral process? How does a student or family know about this, this grant or this thing that we're doing here? And how are people referred to you or to the program?
So, well, through our work with housing instability, or McKinney-Vento could be another law or statute that supports the work we do with families experiencing housing instability. We reach out and meet, we identify students who are experiencing housing instability. So that absolutely helps track which families we would be reaching out to or having conversations with. But ultimately, we have already established a relationship with a family. Typically, we've established a relationship with a family and are already servicing them in some way with McKinney services in our district. And so this would be another referral or service that we would direct a family towards. The referral part is that we sort of vet families that are ready to engage. So when we have families, you know, depending on their stage, their voucher, I know that Natasha could speak a little bit more thorough on this, but with the voucher systems, that is a player to who could be referred to a housing navigator and what services would work for that, and and several other sort of housing scenarios. But ultimately, we're sending families to our housing navigator that are ready to engage in the process of securing or maintaining housing. And that's done through our work that we're consistently doing with them. Anything to add to that?
I think just to add, the way in which we become aware of kids and their family situation is often through teachers, often through kids seeking out resources. And so Natasha and her team and the points of contact are always kind of listening for like, what's your scenario? And then, and when Jenny says they choose to engage, because we can offer certain pathways, but some families aren't ready for that yet. I would also say from a kind of a fiscal perspective, the more families we can get into stable housing, it improves attendance and engagement in academics, but also maybe they don't need a ride from Rumford to go to school, which is federally protected because they have unstable housing. So we're also seeing, as I mentioned before, these cost overruns with transportation. So all of these efforts are, you know, hopefully going to help in those directions.
Member Reeves.
I'm curious if losing the the Lewiston housing connection is going to impact the quality of the referrals, or whether that's just irrelevant. Community Concepts has all the same kinds of.
The switch from
resource.
main housing to Sewell?
No, yes.
Yeah, should no impact in that at all. Project would move forward as it is. Yeah.
Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like there's no real changes to the program itself, just a little bit like the funding mechanisms. And okay, I mean, based on that, I'm completely comfortable. Thank you for all the work that you do. This is a great program.
Saw hands down there. Oh, Member Harper, and then we'll come back.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to reiterate, it sounds like an incredible program. And also I know that, just paying attention to what the Soul Foundation has been offering to nonprofits in Lewiston, Auburn, the $150,000 a year would be a significant increase as to, what they're offering. I think it was like 50,000 maximum for like individual organizations. So this would be a very generous, offering from the Soul Foundation. So I just wanted to, express gratitude for them for just, working with you all and your application process. And yeah, would be incredible thing to offer. So
absolutely. And I do recall that if the district was to partner, which is exactly what we're already doing, then we were able to ask for that max amount.
Member Glant, and then back to Member Hurd.
Just another question. Mentioned McKinney Bento program. Are there any duplication or overlapping services between the two, between the program at Sewell and the McKinney Bento program?
Guidance would be an overlapping service. I think of our McKinney Bento services that we offer out of the Student Resource Center, our focus really is barriers for students to engage in learning during the school day, and that from the Resource Center information we've shared with you folks before, it's warm jackets, warm boots, referrals to services out in the community, of course, but access to food pantry, access to laundry, access to showers if needed. So this is like a step beyond what we would typically be able to offer our families. So we're doing like a warm handoff to a housing expert. And in the past, before we had this dedicated full-time housing navigator working for Lewiston Public Schools through Community Concepts, we would certainly refer families to housing agencies in our community. So that's not going to change. We'll still be doing that, certainly. This is just a very focused, dedicated position for that. So we've secured somebody's time and effort to serve our students and families. But much of the Resource Center work, if we can't provide what folks need, families and students need, we're referring them out to community agencies.
Member Hurd.
Thank you. So you touched on transportation for a quick second, and that got me thinking, are there guidelines? Because my thought is you're saying we're pulling them from further away, but also too, my concern is we know what the housing looks like in our community. And so sometimes you have to step out of that community. Like, are there guidelines that say like, you can only go so far?
There's some limitations. McKinney-Vento is a set of protections, but really it lands on about the language of the stability of housing. And so sometimes housing navigators can find housing that is stable elsewhere, and then students can enroll wherever that is. Versus if they're staying with an aunt or uncle 35 miles away, they actually have protections to come to school in their original school. And so one thing I don't want to get crossed up, McKinney-Vento is really about identification and protections. We get some funding. It's not much, but we do get some funding. But this will help with, in a perfect world, people will have stable housing. And so McKinney-Vento will become irrelevant because while they still may need resources, they won't be identified as homeless. So.
Member Hawkins.
So I've been out of the loop in a lot of these things for a long while, and I didn't really know about this program. Having been a parent who would have very much benefited from this program, I'm glad to see that we have it. I know from experience that getting a referral is great, but it's a huge step from going to getting a referral to actually walking into somebody's office and saying, hey, can you help me? There's a lot of things that can get in the way of that. So having a warm person to kind of be there and serve as an intermediary and smooth that transition, that's great. We already see it's helping, but I'm glad to see we have an option to continue it, because the hurdles that people go through don't just evaporate. You don't hand them a housing referral and instantly it's better. There's a lot of things in the way, and having somebody to help you navigate that is invaluable.
Yes, I agree. And I've witnessed that warm handoff and families really appreciating the efforts between the two, the district and Community Concepts. And it's really why we call it a partnership with them. Like, we're really engaged and sharing information to support the families moving forward.
So do you need a motion from the committee on this?
So yes, I think it's paper trail because of a grant this size, we bring it to you. But the reason I say it's paper trail is this grant application was due, but we had a cancellation of our meeting. So we did submit it, but we are still hopeful to get a motion on it.
Member Hurd, I saw your hand first.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the submission of the Sewell Foundation application.
Member Eames. Okay. So we do have a motion made by Member Hurd and seconded by Member Eames. Is there any public comment on this agenda item before we move to a vote? I see one.
Matthew Egrin, Ward 4. Phoenix, can you move that to the other side so people can actually see the numbers? Thanks. I have a couple questions. One, what is the discretionary funding that they're allowed to spend on? Because that was one of the things that was included. The other thing is, I spoke earlier about the fact these packets are incomplete. Jake, yep, you admitted that you screwed this one up. But this is not at all what that letter states. Nobody in the public knows what you guys are voting on tonight. If they're not here or watching this right now, they have no idea what this is. Where they've already submitted it, why don't you wait to your next meeting to actually vote on this so that the public can actually weigh in? It's not going to hurt anything because it's already been submitted. But at least you let the public actually be able to say, hey, this is what this grant is. And by the way, I think this is a wonderful grant program. If we get it, it's wonderful. But you have to let the people know what you're doing. Transparency is a wonderful thing. Accountability is a wonderful thing. This has neither attached to it right now because nobody knows what you're voting on. Have a good night.
Thank you. I do want to take up the point about the discretionary funding. I'm not sure if we discussed that, and I think that's a good question to address now.
The discretionary funding is used by the Housing Navigator to pay for potentially past utility bills that are a barrier for the family to secure new housing. Potentially a first month's rent if that is necessary. And the Housing Navigator works with these families to make a plan, a real solid plan on how they are going to not only begin to pay for the costs of a new apartment, but continue with that. So the Housing Navigator, the counseling piece is very critical to that, but utility costs, first to last month's rent, potential storage if they're temporary residing somewhere else and need a place to keep their items prior to moving into a new place. So housing assistance related costs.
Thank you. Are there other, Member Harper?
I think the question, I could be wrong, but I think the question was like around the percentage of like how much of the grant is discretionary and yeah.
We had the current grant we have right now is $169,000 and $50,000 was for discretionary funds. We hadn't, with our application for Sewell, hadn't made that definite amount, hadn't had it definite. And again, it depends on employee. With the 150, what would we get after paying for the employee? What we would have remaining would be our discretionary fund amount, and we would need to work with that.
Thank you. Are there other thoughts from the committee? Member Bud.
Sorry, not to beat a dead horse here, but I just feel like this is so wishy-washy with what we received and the presentation that we just got that I'm having a hard time with the concept of voting on this particular agenda item. Because again, it is not at all what was in our packet. And we literally had no idea until just now what was being presented. So I don't know if tabling this is appropriate for the next meeting, but I just feel uncomfortable voting on this, which is why I didn't jump to second this one because this feels uncomfortable to me.
So if I could just say, I would not use the word table, but if the members who did make and second the motion would prefer to withdraw that motion and second and not vote on it now, that is an option if you would prefer, but it is up to the committee. Procedurally, it's up to the committee. Yes, Member Hurd.
So yes, I will withdraw my motion to approve the submission of the Sewell Foundation application.
Member Reeves.
As someone who's constantly harping on needing the stuff on time, I will also withdraw my motion,
Okay,
my second.
thank you. Just to clarify, Superintendent Langlis, there is not a urgent need for this vote.
No, there's not. And again, I apologize.
Okay.
I gotta name my files more cleanly.
Okay, yeah, I think that's appropriate. So we're just going to move on to the next agenda item. We're not going to take any action on this one now, and we will come back to it at a future meeting. But thank you very much for all the work that's gone into this. I'm glad that you did get it in. So I think it's fair to say, and we did hear there's a lot of support from the committee for this. We look forward to seeing the results. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 9, which is to review the school committee policy BDB.
Just pulling up that file, which was in the packet and is the right one.
Okay, yeah, Member Bowden before the superintendent goes.
I'm sorry, just before we start with this, this isn't the same information that we were running off of with the last committee. So I'm just curious. All right, I'll clarify. All right, so in this, the last time this was voted on was June 6, 2022. And it talks about having a vice chair, and that's something that we got rid of. Did we just get rid of that via procedural rules? Did we not get rid of that via policy? I'm just trying to clarify why this is not the most, this doesn't seem like it's the most up to date. Even though it was voted on in 2022, this is not how we were proceeding with the last school committee group.
Correct. And it was put into procedural rules. I don't know if Karen remembers if she chimed in, but there's been some things that have been cleaned up through policy and I think are working in the right direction. And I think that we did some things like, for example, the procedural rules, including language around including public comment. Well, we should always include public comment. That's the rule of public meetings. But sometimes things find their ways into procedural rules that don't actually live elsewhere than the same language. Member McLaughlin, chair picked up on the parliamentarian. It wasn't may or could, it was shall. And so I think we're just trying to get better and better.
I don't know if you had more to add, but I mean, I do think there is a bit of awkwardness with this one where I think this is the only reference to, and I'm actually not sure if this is the only reason this is up here, but the only reference to a vice chair in policy is this line, and it doesn't say that we shall have a vice chair. It just says that this is all it says, just in the absence of the chair, the vice chair shall perform all the duties of the chair. But there's nothing about, do we need one or do we not? How do we go about it? So that's one item. I don't know if there are other points that you wanted to address with this.
I think my goal was when we're looking at procedural rules and looking at the policy, there were things that were out of alignment. And so I thought it best to bring forward the policy and make sure that whatever we're doing moving forward, that it does align to policy or it goes back to policy for review or adjustments.
So this is a little open-ended, right? So it's just if members have any opinions about that part in particular or anything else in this piece of the policy. And I don't think technically we're out of compliance with anything, continuing to operate as we are. But I think as the superintendent was saying, it is a little out of place, I think, whether we keep it there. So any thoughts from members on this item currently? Yes, Member Hurd.
Thank you. So, I don't really have any issues. I was just hoping that, F, be the public spokesperson for the school committee at all times, except as the responsibility is specifically delegated to others. In the past, there hasn't been a lot of like committee input if the chair is speaking to the press or the general public or sending out a statement or that kind of thing. So I'm not demanding that that happen, but I'm just politely requesting that, like, as we go forward, if that's something that our current chair would be comfortable kind of asking the committee or taking input or, whatever, because as you are technically speaking for the entire body, maybe you're potentially saying that doesn't something or insinuating something that not the entire body agrees with.
Was there a hand? Member Eames?
But as a body, if we vote on something, we have to follow it. Like, right, so we speak as one, once the matter has been voted on and agreed upon, then it's a unified voice. It's, I suppose, earlier on in the process where there might be multiple ideas afloat, but that, but generally we've been deferring to the superintendent and the chair. So I have mixed feelings about allowing multiple voices, but if we do it, we can only be before a vote, not after.
Member Bowden?
Thank you. I think what you're saying applies in some cases, but there are also cases where I personally have been, I've been emailed or I've gotten a phone call from somebody from the media about something that happened. Like let's just say, for example, recently, right? Back in January when there was ICE movement in Lewiston, right? I get a message. Do you have anything to say about this? We've been trying to reach somebody at City Hall all day to give a statement. No one will give us a statement. We tried to reach a superintendent. We couldn't get him. Can you give us a statement on what you think? And so in that case, like I still would defer to our chair or our superintendent, like I do every time. But I think it's important if it's not something that we have discussed as a committee, then that's when I think it's important that you are reaching out. Like, this is not a final, like, we voted on something and it's over with. And like now as a body, like that's our opinion, right? When it's something that's just happening on the fly and it's just an attention grabbing like headline that the media is trying to get a comment from us on, I just think it's important. And I will echo what Member Hurd said, that you are making sure that you actually are speaking for all of us and you're not just putting out a statement based on your feelings on what's going on, if that makes sense. And I think that's where Member Hurd was trying to go with that. So I'm comfortable with it as long as you're comfortable with speaking for us, knowing that we are one, basically.
Yeah. And that's always been my understanding, is that it's primarily to refer to what the committee does as a whole committee, meaning ideally something that we voted on. I do think there's a bit of difficulty in practice in that if there is a media request or something, it's probably because of something urgent, and they're probably asking because we haven't voted on it yet. So that is a little difficult. And I also, we can't communicate. If something comes up, I can't email everyone and be like, what do you think? Because that gets in the way of public meeting processes and all that. So I do think a difficult balance, but I do agree that, yeah, I mean, the principle is it's not this language about being the public spokesperson for the school committee does mean literally that. It doesn't mean what the chair thinks about the issue. It does mean what the corporate body that we're a part of has decided and said, which unfortunately, honestly, for media needs, that can sometimes be nothing. Not literally nothing, but it ends up, deferring to the superintendent, who is, have that capability. And so that does tend to be where probably I will end up deferring often when something urgent is coming up. Yeah, Member Bowden.
I also just wanted to say, part of the reason that I was comfortable voting for you to be chair, Member McLaughlin, is because I know that you are extremely careful and thoughtful in your responses. That's just how you are as a person. You're very calm, and I do think you think things through very carefully before you speak. So I do appreciate that about you, and I do trust that you will represent us well. So that is one of the main reasons why this was a unanimous vote on our board. I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but that's how I feel. So I think you'll do a good job as long as you just stay consistent and yeah.
Okay.
fine with it.
Well, thank you. Just before we, did you have something else on that specific point? I was just going to say, so my understanding, you don't necessarily see a need to edit that language, or was there something? No. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Member Eames.
I just didn't realize that you were ex officio member of every committee. I read it here. I don't think that means you have to show up.
I won't be every subcommittee. Yes, I did notice that as well. But yeah, thanks for pointing that out. So are there any, so to the point that came up earlier in terms of, do we need to, in some cases, direct the policy committee, subcommittee to be reviewing items? Is there any particular direction on this policy we would like to give that subcommittee? Yes.
So I'll just say this is one of the policies that's on the docket. But when we have a policy subcommittee, the whole section B hasn't been reviewed since 2022. So that's a section we'll be reviewing. So if we have, this can be one of the first ones in that section. It is close to the top, and we can certainly take suggestions for that. So that's what where you were going with that, but I just wanted people to know where it was on the list of policies to be reviewed with the committee.
Member Bowden.
I just have one more thing because we had discussed it at an earlier meeting. I honestly don't remember if it was with this board or the last committee or the last committee, but where we don't at the moment have a parliamentarian, even though we shall, but we do not. And I seem to remember you were the parliamentarian, Member McLaughlin, last time, or
We never voted on it.
okay, we never wrote on it.
Yeah.
But you had showed interest in it. And so I don't know if it needs to be language in here, but I think it probably should be language in here that if we run into a situation where we're not sure, that we pause and we take a quick recess to look it up. And I know we talked about that. I don't know if it needs to be language in this specifically, but I kind of feel like it should be. It just feels like that fits in this policy as far as, us deciding or you as the chair deciding, making that decision, like we need to pause for a minute and we need to look this over before we continue.
Yeah, that could even fit, because I forget which one it is, but where the parliamentarian piece lives is in the section of policy about the rules of order and all that. So that might be a place to write in something about that. Yeah. Okay. Any other input you feel you need on this right now?
No, I just think in times like this, when we have a cycle and we turn over, just to refer to the policy and make sure we're using language as smart as we can, or if the committee wishes to change the policy, we can review it.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this before we move on? There isn't a vote at the moment, but okay. Seeing none, we're going to, oh, did you have something else? Yeah, Member Bowden.
I mean, we just brought it up briefly, but then we didn't actually talk about it. That line about the vice chair shall perform the duties of the chair. We don't have a vice chair. And did we make a decision as a committee to not have a vice chair, or are we saying that we are going to have a vice chair?
I think
Because I think that it's kind of on you, right?
I was going to say the opposite. I mean, because
Okay.
as it says, I mean, the fundamental role is to perform the duties of the chair when the chair is not here. So I would be more interested if the members of the committee have preferences on that, because the way that we've done it, and actually still have in the rules, is just that we do a pro temp vote at that particular meeting. So yeah, Councilor Herman, you have your hand up.
Yeah, the only issue with going with a pro tem person is if something comes up between meetings, including something urgent perhaps, and if for some reason the chair isn't available, then there has to be somebody to take on those duties. But it seems like it seems like we can still manage that, especially with modern technology. We can all be in touch with each other. Yeah, so I guess I don't have strong feelings one way or the other, whether we have one or not.
Member Harper.
When you say manage that, do you mean like, I mean, would that mean, because we can't take an electronic vote as my understanding, so so we couldn't do a pro tem electronically. Do it here. We would have to wait until the meeting.
Member Glant, you had your hand up as well.
Yes, I think we have everything to gain and nothing to lose if we do have a vice. I think it would be just to cover ourselves and to keep things aligned and things going. So I would be in favor of having a vice.
Okay, Member Bowden.
So in all the years I've been doing this, there's never been a situation where we have needed, we've never been in a situation, well, we've needed a vice, or a pro tem chair, because, you're sick or you had a baby, right? So, there's been like I can count on one hand the number of times that we haven't had our actual chair at the meeting. I can't really picture what an emergency situation would be where we would need a vice chair and the actual chair couldn't at least make a phone call with Jake beforehand. I'm just saying if we're going with vice chair, cool. If we're not, I think we need to remove that language and turn it into whatever it is.
So I would add, it's a very awkward position for the superintendent to be in, to not be able to know should something pop up, who's going to be in that role. That person, if the other person's not available, helps build the agenda, helps prepare for and facilitate meetings. I think the pro tem thing worked okay when we were kind of in transition after the recent movements, but I don't, from my experience, having a vice chair, there's a little bit of a security there in that if someone's not available, you just know who it's going to be. If they're not available for an extended period of time, you could always choose a new chair. So there's processes there. But I know when we transitioned this year in that window from the election to end of January, there was some influx there that if a meeting didn't go well for some reason, there was nobody collaborating on the agenda items. There was no, I think that's an important part of the process because you all are my boss. And then I was creating documents and structures for things that didn't have your input through a mechanism. So I just think having a vice chair could be valuable for the unpredictable things. And I think to Member Bowden's point, we've never really needed one except for those transition windows when we did the pro tem, which was fine, but it would be nice to know who might be that person.
Member Hurd and then Member Eames.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think originally we decided to go away from the vice chair because there were some concerns about stacking the deck, I guess is the nicest way for me to put that. And so we kind of did away with vice chair because we wanted to maybe give some other members an opportunity to like be in that position if that's something that they wanted to do. And so I still feel strongly about that. Like there are members of this board that may have not had the opportunity to be chair and maybe want to, or, I don't know, but we got rid of it for a reason, because it was kind of almost like a power grab. And I'm hoping that we can, as a committee, get away from that. So if it's the will of the committee to have a vice chair again, then I'm fine with it. But I think there were enough reasons to get rid of it that we decided to get rid of it. So.
Member Eames and then Member Jensen.
As the person you got rid of, I would just say that it was only once that I ever did anything as the vice chair, and I think I was vice chair for 2 years, maybe. It's really very irrelevant, so no power grab involved.
Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess like as far as functioning of a position of a vice chair goes, it's really like any function or role that we could give to a vice chair is something we should probably be giving to the chairperson in general. We don't really need two leaders among the small elected group like this. I think if we do have a vice chair, it'd pretty much be almost like an assistant to you. It's kind of how you feel like the leadership structure you want, the organizational structure you want as a committee. If it's someone that you feel could help you as kind of like an assistant who doesn't technically have any power, but just kind of, again, assist you, I think it could be valuable. But without that, I mean, I don't really feel like we need one particularly. So honestly, I would kind of defer to how you feel. Sorry.
Okay. Either way, I don't think we need to vote on this right now. My preference, if you all don't mind, would be that we continue because I'm getting a couple strong pros and a couple not so sures and a few indifferent. And so and to be honest, I don't feel very strongly about this. So it's hard for me to just kind of make a quick decision here. So how about we move on for tonight? I don't think we need to act on this right now. And we can continue this conversation. I think if there's anyone who's especially interested in the role as well, please let me know because that might help. So I don't want us to just decide in the abstract that we want to do this and then nobody wants to do this because we need this. We need the parliamentarian and we need the legislative liaison as well. So ideally, that means 4 of the 9 of us would have sort of an, I don't know what you would call it, but an additional officer role with the committee. And so that's another factor as well. So I think just for all 3 of these, let's say this between now and the next meeting, please let me know if you're interested in either the vice chair, parliamentarian, or legislative liaison. Hopefully at the next meeting or soon after we can establish what we'll do with those roles. How about that? Okay, Member Bowden, yes.
Sorry. When does policy, well, do you not know when policy meets again? That the only reason I brought it up is because you just said this was going to be at the beginning of the policy packet. And so I just think it's not really fair to send it off to you guys without knowing exactly what the committee wants to do. So that's the only reason I brought it up.
So I think the next agenda item is for you to determine who's on what committee. And once you determine who's on the committee, then we will have a meeting scheduled. And I think it's, we put it on here every other month on Thursdays. So that's the answer. That's the answer I have.
So plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
Wonderful. Okay.
Member Reeves?
I just want to reiterate that what Jake said, that it seems like since Jake really would appreciate having a vice, that I think we should defer to his wishes. That it's not me, I have no interest, but just for you all to know that just to raise up Jake's opinion.
Okay. Councilor Harriman.
Yes, I agree with that. And just another point to think about is that if there are concerns about the choosing of the vice chair, we could change it to the whole committee votes on who the person is rather than the chair appointing them. I think that would be another fair way to do it.
Or if you have several.
Yes, Member Clant.
Yes, and if you have several people that are interested in it, then that would be probably need a vote for that, so.
Okay. Okay, can we move on? Okay, great. Oh, sorry, Superintendent.
Just before we move on, I won't lose sleep over it. If you decide not to have vice chair, I just think that there's language that exists in policy and whatnot around it. And having not had anyone for a little bit, I think it would be just something to think about.
Any further public comment on this one before we move on? Okay, we have one.
Matthew Egren, Ward 4. Having a vice chair, yeah, the person has no real responsibilities. However, what they are is if God forbid something happens to Phoenix, there's contingency of government. It's nice to have that policy because what if, God forbid, something happened to Phoenix, he was out for 2 or 3 meetings, who's going to be in charge? You guys have you do pro temp. That's a wonderful little temporary hold. But nowadays in the world, anything could happen. Put a vice chair in.
All right, thank you. I'm not sure I should say thank you. I guess it's ominous, but you're right. But no, I appreciate that. All right, I think let's move on to the next agenda item, which is to discuss school committee subcommittees and other roles. I will let the superintendent start this one.
So we shared a list of different school committee subcommittees, and there are also some items at the bottom, including parliamentarian, which has been mentioned, the legislative rep, which has been mentioned. We also, it's not really a school committee specific role, but we have a public health committee rep that has to represent Lewiston Public Schools. We do have a staff interested in that, which I'm happy to share, but I also didn't know if the committee wanted to have someone do that. The last chair participated in that. Lisa Escobar, who was our substance use and prevention counselor at the high school who works district-wide around some things, is interested in that role and has served on that committee, I believe, in the past. So really, today would be the opportunity to either say what you'd like to be a part of and set that stage. And in the past, what we've done is gotten people's interests. We keep a list. We're not usually overwhelmed with interest, so it usually it kind of fills itself pretty quick, and then we can get to work with the reminders of the chair responsibilities and all those kinds of components for the subcommittees.
Maybe we could just start if people have any questions just about what the subcommittees are, what they do, any thoughts, and then we could just go around and get people's interest. So any questions or anything before we do that? Member Harper.
As the only person on this committee who's never served on this committee before, around negotiations, I assume that is during the budget cycle, but I was just curious what the schedule is for that. It's not.
You want to speak to that, Member Bowden?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So negotiations only happen when contracts are nearing their end, usually like a year before. And so the bargaining unit will open up negotiations with us, and it is not around budget season. It is whenever that contract is up. And typically, I mean, I feel like they've been pretty off season with budget, actually. That hasn't really overlapped. So I don't even think we have any negotiations opening up again until next year. No? We have one?
That needs to be negotiated for.
Okay, one that needs to be negotiated before next year. So yeah, but once you're in negotiations and it's opened, it is a time commitment for sure.
And there are
Yeah, I can speak to that.
There are 7 or 8 collective bargaining agreements.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're not every year.
Every
2, 3 years, usually 3. Every 3. Thank you. Bill's yelling from the audience for the people at home that can't hear. So the time commitment usually looks like, when we open up one of the first meetings, we sit and we schedule out usually like a solid month of times that we're going to meet. And it's typically sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a week. But it all depends on the unit that's opening it up and how they're bargaining. There's definitely a lot to learn. I actually think, Bill, didn't you say there was a class or a seminar or something that was coming up for people that are interested?
We'll stop yelling from the corner.
Cool.
Yeah, so Drummond and Woodson usually does an annual conference for school committee members specifically to learn about collective bargaining agreements.
So yeah, that's definitely helpful. I jumped into it kind of blind. I didn't get one of those. But I had Bruce Damon and Tanya Whitlow who had served on it for years prior, so I got to learn quite a bit from them. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely a time commitment, especially when you've got 2 going at once. That's always fun. But it's fun. It's a fun process. So.
Yeah, any other questions? Doesn't have to just be Member Harper, it could be from anyone. Okay. If no other questions or information needed right now, I think it might be maybe most fair if we just go down the line and hear what people are interested in, and then we can start to work out the makeup. And we're not voting on this, so I suppose we could mix it up and maybe start with Member Jensen and go down. So Member Jensen, do you have any thoughts on subcommittees?
Sure. Two stood out to me, negotiations and curriculum.
Okay, you're writing this down. Thank you. Member Bowden?
Yeah, so I've been on finance and negotiations pretty much my whole time here. So I would like to stay on those two. And I am comfortable with the public health committee rep as I'm sorry.
Lisa Escobar.
Sorry, I could not think of her first name. Thank you. Lisa Escobar. I'm comfortable. That actually makes a lot of sense for her to be the rep for that. So I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, thanks. I should also say, sorry, before we move on, can you remind me, is there a limit to the number of school committee members that can be on subcommittees?
Yeah, you can't have a quorum, so it's going to be under 5.
So
My
it can be more than, it can be 3 or 4.
It's
if-
my
if
understanding
there's
it's 3 or
that many
4,
interested.
and
Okay.
and historically there have been at times it was more pressing topics, and I remember a time when there was only somebody who could be on the committee, others could join the meeting, but they had to sit on the side and not participate. So that's the quorum piece.
Okay. So I just want to put that out there, just that, if 8 of us want to be on finance, then that's not going to work. But, okay, so yes, Member Reams.
Unlikely problem.
Yeah.
So I have been on policy and curriculum, happy to continue, and I've been the legislative liaison in the past. I don't have to be, but I have been.
Thank you. Member Bowden.
I just want to speak to that. I think she actually does a really great job as a legislative liaison, and she stays very current with everything and brings it to us. And so I also think that would be great if you'd stay on as that, Elizabeth.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Member Harper, any thoughts?
Yeah, assuming that, is it next meeting that we'll make a votes on who gets where?
So we actually don't need to vote on this. I think, yeah, I think technically they might be appointed, but it's effectively what you say. If we can balance it out, then you can join it.
Okay. Well, I don't know that, I mean, I was sort of like, there's 3 committees that I figured, I feel like I probably can't serve on all 3. It's a time commitment wise, but I'll just tell you what those 3 are. How's that sound? Okay. Dropout prevention, negotiations and policy.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Still writing down the notes. How about you, Member Hawkins?
I have to agree with Julie a little bit about time constraint. My schedule behind the wheel of that big yellow thing makes things kind of difficult. So we'll have to be pretty communicative about when we're having these meetings, because again, time is limited.
Yeah, if I could just say, I mean, typically the scheduling is worked out once we know who is on the subcommittee, including the staff.
In that case, I was on facilities and finance before and very much enjoyed my time there. It taught me a lot. I'd be very happy to fill in again, as well as dropout prevention, because that's kind of where my heart is. So.
Okay. Member Hurd.
Thank you. So I am not going to let Bill get off easy. I would like to continue my term on facilities. And I have very much enjoyed being on the wellness committee. Sorry, Karen. Yes, those are the 2 that I would like. Thank you.
Okay, Member Glant.
Yes, it's a quandary here. I expect to be moved out of state between July and August. So I would not take on more than what I did last year. I had 2, but I would just like to stay with facilities as long as I'm here.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Councilor Herman.
Yes, so I have been on negotiations and I am happy to continue on that. It sounds like there's some other interest though, so I am also happy to go to kind of wherever I'm needed.
Okay. So I suppose that leaves me, I am ex officio member of all of them, apparently, as was pointed out. I will see if I can make finance work in terms of the schedule, but I'm glad, I think we had at least two people mention interest in that. I think it's good if we have at least two school committee members on each. So that would be the one if we can sort that out scheduling wise. So it sounds like we have enough interest. Are there any that lacking?
So you actually have two for all of the school committee kind of exclusive subcommittees. The district wellness committee is bigger than the school committee, so it's okay to have just member Hurd on that if that's what you choose to do. The public health thing is actually outside of the school committee, but the school has to send a rep. So if that's Lisa, that will be fine. And then the legislative rep has for a long time been one person, and that is also just fine. And I would, again, from my chair, say again, kudos to Elizabeth because she's been very helpful in that process with timely communication, because when things get rolling in the legislature, it can happen fast. And she does a great job even reaching out to me with different things that are moving. So yes.
And dropout really only meets annually. That's the minimum that we have to meet. I mean, we could meet more if we wanted to, but it's really only once a year. So for the couple people who said that, you know, they don't really want to overextend themselves, it would only be once a year.
So let me put it this way. Would everyone be comfortable with doing all of the ones that you just said? So as I think most of you listed two, it doesn't sound like we have too many. Yeah.
So just real quick for finance, I have Janet, Linnea, and Phoenix. Facilities, Linnea, Megan, and Donna. Curriculum, Luke and Elizabeth. Negotiations, Luke, Janet, and Julia. Policy, Elizabeth and Julia. District Wellness, Megan Hurd. Dropout Prevention, Julia and Linnea. Public Health would be Lisa, unless somebody else wants to do that. And Legislative, Elizabeth. Did I miss anything?
Any regrets?
Yeah, sorry, Scott, you were negotiations. Okay. That
So
makes four negotiations if we do that.
Which is not, yeah, that's fine. That would be below a quorum. Member Bowden.
Yeah, no, it's below quorum, but it's actually good because there needs to be at least one school committee member. We prefer two at negotiation meetings. And a lot of times, like, we can't always accommodate everybody's schedule at every single meeting. So it's really good to have a couple extra. So that's great.
Okay. Any other thoughts, or should we consider that the makeup of the subcommittees? Okay, great. Any public comments on that? No votes needed on that one, but okay, we're gonna keep moving on. So number 11 is a discussion of the school committee and district goals. I'll let the superintendent start this one.
So in the packet, we shared the draft goals that had been shared last fall. They've had some different rounds of input, but there's also seemingly been some interest in maybe looking at some different ideas. And so well, maybe I did this, but kind of dragged our feet as we were right in that election window, because we knew we'd want the new committee, whatever the makeup of that was, to have input on the goals that they were adopting and not get too heavy in adopting something that might change in a few weeks. And so it's that time, but I think this anchors the work that we do and the things that we try to attain. A couple of pieces of input, at least for me, that have been shared prior, but having too many goals and too many measures, I often find little gets done. So I prefer to keep the goals measurable and attainable. And we did have years ago, there was something like 10 goals, but underneath those, there were so many indicators. I remember at the time I was a building administrator and just felt overwhelmed by having 40 things that we were trying to achieve. When we built this initial draft for discussion that you have in front of you, there's some components to them that include, especially when we got into like newer items, cost and how many years it might take to do it. So whatever you choose for goals, I guess my input would be, we need to be mindful of what that might legitimately cost the district, but also what's a realistic time for rolling that out. So one example for that is I've heard goals like we're going to reach 95% graduation. Okay, well, how are we going to do that? What is that going to cost if we try to do that? And is that something we want to do by next June, or is that a multi-year goal with structures? So I just sometimes worry that goals are lofty and people want them, but what's it take to get there? How much time, how much resource? And so those are just my little nuggets of input. There's some things here that are some pretty straightforward, but also some that are more reaching as far as a wraparound approach to a whole school approach. And so a community school approach. So yeah, I just wanted to start the conversation that way.
So I also wanted to share some thoughts on the process for the committee. Because I think it's worth thinking how we break this up, and this is going to spill a little bit into the next agenda item as well. But I did bring this up to Jake, and my suggestion would be that the committee aim to actually vote in some form on adopting the goals themselves, like as currently listed, the four high level goals, and we'll discuss what those are, and that's we'll do a little bit of that now and eventually in the future. But not necessarily vote all at once on this whole memo, this whole package of things. So look at adopting, a resolve or something directing the superintendent to carry out those goals. And then we use those to structure some meetings later on in the year. So we have one focused on, currently the first is increasing graduation rate. So we have a meeting that's dedicated to initiatives related to that. And then if there are further votes needed on policy or other things, then we try to wrap that in at that meeting. And the reason is so that my thought anyways, in terms of facilitating the meetings, is that so we're actually kind of putting a little oomph behind it. We're not just saying, here's a nice document, email it around to people, but actually saying, no, the committee has agreed that these are worth pursuing as a district and actually setting, but not getting so hung up on every detail, which I think would then make that impossible to come to a complete agreement on it in one meeting. Or sorry, not one meeting, but as part of a single vote. So I say all that to say that I think it would be great if this evening we can talk more about what members want to see in those goals, and then probably not vote. In fact, I would recommend that we don't vote on them tonight, both so we can then get more of that public input, which we had discussed previously via a survey. And then at our next regular meeting, not a budget workshop probably, but so maybe later in March, we would then see if we're close enough to agreeing on those goals and actually voting on something then. So I just wanted to lay that out there just to try to set up a little bit of, this evening's conversation, if nothing else, in terms of, what to discuss. So with that, any thoughts, we can take the conversation from there. Member Bowden, I saw your hand.
Yeah, so I just have a couple things that I wrote down when I went through this. A couple different things here. So first, when we're talking about like our primary grades and ensuring that they are at grade level by like grade 3, I would love to see us establish some sort of back to basics initiative where we are really prioritizing core subjects like math, science, reading, and social studies or history. And then when we talk about graduation rates, I think it would be wise of us to have some sort of like public performance dashboard for the community to be able to see if so if we aren't hitting that 73% goal that we're setting, is there some sort of quarterly data that can be shared on this dashboard for people to see once a year to see where we are at? Because it just seems like, people will Google national data and then they run with that, right? But I think if we were to share something quarterly, it would be helpful. Like as a parent, I think it would be helpful to see, but I also think just as, general public, looking in like where is our district at? So those are the two things that like stood out to me. I mean, there's other things, but those are the two things that I wrote down to just start with.
Okay, Member Eames.
Are we talking about goal 1?
Oh, I was all over the place.
I think feel free to, any goals you want. If,
Well, okay,
yeah.
so, well, my big question is, what is a community school model? I don't know. And if I don't know, then I think a lot of people don't know. So I think maybe that just can you just say in a short sentence what it is?
Yeah, so just briefly, a community school model is where you start to infuse things, tutors, volunteers, accessing, college supports, have been in the classroom, after hours. So you start looking at the who's on grade level, who's not, and you really try to plan wraparound services. Um, the the challenge to that can just be about coordination and resources. But certainly it would be a targeted approach to, you could have second graders staying after school for intervention with tutors, volunteer structure, what have you, to make sure they can be closing the gaps to be on grade level. And really, I would say focus that on the younger, the better, is my initial thought.
Thank you, because that's very helpful and I think important. So maybe just, I don't know, being clear about what that is up front at the top. That would be one idea. You wanted to, for dropout prevention, check in at grade 6. Shouldn't we do it more than just at grade 6? Seems like that would be the kind of thing you would want to do every other year, maybe, or something like that. So then I've got I just wrote clarify next to like half a dozen things. So maybe at some other meeting or privately, we can talk about what they mean. And then I don't know if when you're talking about students, is it all students or just needy students that are being mentioned? Like 90% of students benefit from partnership programs, mentoring, food support annually. Is that 90% of all students, 90% of needy students? That's a question I had, just
It's
trying.
actually the inverse to all that, was thinking that we would get to 90% of the kids essentially having what they need to access school. Because right now that gap is much bigger than 90%.
Okay, well, again, okay.
How we
so I didn't
establish that
understand
metric, again, I think that's, once we have goals, we could start talking about things like dashboard and what metrics we'd use for that and how we might go about it.
Okay, so I don't know how to go about this then, because I need clarification on particular lines. This is not the time to do it. When do we do it? How do we do it? Should I just call you one day?
Well, I guess there's a couple of frames for this. One is I can remember I pulled this together as like a not generic. I mean, it's catered to us, but I was also trying to get to that place of these are the school committee's goals. And so I'm not,
I'm not, it's not a
Married to
criticism.
them
I'm
much.
just trying to figure out what I'm voting on.
yeah, no, I'm not taking this criticism. I guess what I'm saying is if the school committee wants to create the goals and use this as a kind of, well, Jake thought these ones might be reasonable and build an entire different set of goals, I'm totally fine with that.
So just,
That is not what I'm asking. I just want to know what this means.
so I think maybe and I can clarify a little more about what I meant earlier, which might get at what you're saying, which is my suggestion, in part exactly because of what you're just saying, and Member Bowden as well, is that because there's so many little details and so many things I think we would need to figure out and define better and all that, I think we start with literally just agreeing on goal number 1, increase graduation rates by 15% within 5 years to 82.8% or higher. None of the stuff below that until later on. So that would be my suggestion, just because I think it will be otherwise too difficult to try to work up a single perfect document that then we vote on that explains every bit of the implementation. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, great. Member Hurd.
Thank you. So I actually hate goal number 2. Because in all honesty, we don't need a standardized test to tell what our kids are lacking in. Our staff know that already. Like, they are the ones that are in the classroom. They are the one that are working with the students. Like, you know how I feel about standardized tests. And I agree with Member Bowden. Right now, literally, and you hate when I say this, but we're teaching to a test. We are teaching our students in the subjects of the NWEA test so we can raise our test scores. Like, there are so many other things other than just standardized test scores that we should be focusing on in the classroom. And so I hate goal number 2 because I don't even think we should be focusing on a standardized test. I know that's where people pull their data from, and that's what Member Bowden said. Like, people are looking to quickly Google something and get some sort of data, but like, I know the state cares about it, but I don't care. I care that our kids can have a conversation and keep eye contact with an individual while they're having a conversation. I care about our kindergarten students being able to still have free play and some sort of imaginative centers in our classrooms, which kindergarten, first grade, they don't. My 8-year-old still plays with dolls every single day, and it's huge for her development. And we're taking these things because we're asking our kindergartners to be third graders. And it's I don't like goal number 2. I would like to get rid of it completely. I know people are probably going to come for me, but come for me, because there are so many other things that we should be looking at to raise in our district, and it's not standardized test scores. That does not show like truly a whole picture of who our kids are.
Further thoughts from the committee? Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess since it's just kind of fresh in the mind, I completely agree about the goal number 2, maybe making some changes there, maybe moving away from some of those standardized testing models, or the ones that we kind of use. Like, if we're judging by math skills, I think we could even have like our math coaches or experts come up with some kind of like running records for math skills. If you're in 4th grade, these are the skills you should know. 6th grade, these are the skills you should know. 2nd, these are the skills you should know. And we can base success or growth based on how well our students are meeting those. So I think that would be much more effective in like judging reading by like reading level, rather than the statewide testing that we do. I pray to God that our legislature will realize that they need to make changes to the every student succeeds, the way we implement it here in Maine, and how we strictly do it for the test. It is required, but other states kind of de-emphasize the testing portion. I really hope Maine follows suit. But getting back on topic, I guess like as far as the goals go, I do like the idea of kind of getting it back to more to basics, just focusing on the goals themselves and then increasing from, going off from there. Like, I feel like we as a school committee should decide the goals, but the objectives of how to achieve those goals would best be decided by our school staff, our superintendent here. They are the experts on how to do that. So, like, for example, looking at goal number 1, increasing graduation rate, even with the numbers there's so much out of our control. Because if you really look at it, I think like studies have shown like 90% of a student's success in school is determined by outside factors. So that's 90%. So there's only 10% that we're really working with for students at school. So to me, if we're going to make any kind of increase, we absolutely have to emphasize increasing parental engagement in the process. So having a goal, maybe something like, increase parental engagement, isn't necessarily focused on a number, like a specific statistic we're looking for. But if that's something our superintendent wants to include in the objectives themselves, and like we can help measure this by hitting this, standard, I think that makes a little bit more sense. Like, again, looking at goal number 1, to me, that's kind of like a team like setting, oh, we'll, win the NFC championship this year. When to me, there's so many factors that could play into that. Again, we're only working with 10%. So something more simple that we don't have like numbers necessarily in there. The graduation rate is more of a reflection of the economy, poverty in an area. A kid's success in life is mostly determined by their zip code. Like, that's just flat out it. And so there's some factors that I don't think we'll be able to overcome, and setting like a percentage, it's not within our control. We shouldn't set it as a goal. So philosophically, I would like the idea of kind of like setting our priorities as a district. We'll probably have a lot in common. Like, for me, it's increasing that parental engagement, it's reducing teacher workload, and it's improving school safety. If we can make some progress in any of those 3 things, preferably all of them, I'll consider it a successful year. And I feel like we probably agree on a lot of those together. So if we kind of just list out what our priorities are, I feel like it's going to make the goal process a little bit easier. So we're going to realize what it is that we want to focus on, what we have in common. And then we give our school staff the ability to decide how we can best meet those goals. I think it's more realistic. I mean, if we set this like goal and just go with goal number 1 of hitting these like numbers, we're probably not going to do it. So let's just not set ourselves up for failure. Let's give our school staff members, the experts, more of a say in this. I guess, and kind of move forward there. I think that's all that I really had on that. Yeah, we're probably in a line here, just maybe to back things up a bit and simplify, and then kind of rebuild from there.
Member Hawkins.
I agree with some of what Representative Jensen said. And I think that the parts about the goals that really got to me are goal 3 and 4. Because in my work and in what I see in my community, those are things I think are really going to help the creating a safe, trauma-informed school environment. I mean, there's no question we need that in this community. People are going to say it's not true, but we very much need that in our community. If you work with the students on a daily basis, you know we need that. And goal 4, the foster community and student engagement and partnerships, we can include parents in that as well, because they are part of our community as well. And I do see in my work, unfortunately in my work, a lot of good attempts and vast gaps. The part that really got to me about goal 3 was train all staff, teachers, bus drivers, custodians in trauma-informed care and de-escalation. I will tell you, from just my part of the work, that can't happen soon enough. It really, really can't. Because we're the first face those children see in their school day, and we're the last face they see in their school day. And if we don't have the skills to make our portion as smooth as possible, that's how they're starting their day. And if it's already upheaval and upset, which some days it is, I will tell you. Anyway, if it's already an upheaval, that's just going to color the whole rest of their day. And we can adjust, we can fix that. And I know some of that's discussion with my boss and everybody else, but I like seeing that here. And I think if we can get all these things rolling together and really let the people hands-on run with it and tell us how to make this happen, I think we'll see changes in like the graduation rate and things like that. It might not be immediate. Some things take time. But if we show willingness to work on things, people will step in and be like, hey, they're trying. Let's keep this going. Little snowball. So.
Member Hurd and then back to Member Bowden.
Thank you. So I also think I agree with Member Jensen too. I don't like the percentages or the numbers. I know some people like those, but I just think, again, we're putting ourselves in a position where we feel like we have to get to that number. But I think we have a unique district, and so we have to come up with some like unique out of the box type things. And so I'm hoping under goal number 1 about the credit recovery and flexible pathways, that's something that we're trying to think out of the box with. Like those are the types of things that we need to be implementing throughout our district, not just for graduation rates, but though that's the type of thinking that we need to come up with for the other goals, because like I said, our district is unique. We have challenges. If we want to improve graduation rates, it can't just be like, we're going to get a tutor, we're going to get a count. Like some of those things just don't work for kids. Like some kids just aren't book kids. And so how can we work around helping them continue to get their credits in a different way that works best for them?
Member Bowden.
Thank you. I also agree with Member Jensen. Goal 1, I really think it should just say we should try to increase our graduation rates, period. And I don't think there should be numbers there, but I still do think there should be some sort of dashboard for parents to check in and see like, where are we at there every quarter? Because that can show growth in itself, and it doesn't need to be like, it doesn't need to just be this annual thing every year that we're like trying to hit this percentage, right? I just think if we have some growth every year, that's a good thing. In regard to goal 2, you know how I feel about this too. I'm right on board with Member Hurd. I don't think standardized tests give a full picture of anything. I understand that you need to have a standardized test in place for federal funding. I understand that. That doesn't mean I'm a fan of it. And I hate that we teach to test. That drives me absolutely crazy. And like, I opted my children out of standardized testing. As soon as they started taking it, I opted them out and they never took it. They still ended up in gifted and talented. They still ended up, all the things that they could do without standardized testing. And so, if we're going to continue to give those, and I still think we need to offer opt-out forms, not just if a parent wants to call and opt out, like we should still offer that letter that says you have the option to opt your child out of the standardized test if that's your free will, right? If that's what you want to do. And we don't do that anymore, unfortunately. I think that goal 3 and goal 4 could kind of mesh together in a sense. It all seems to be around, social emotional care, trauma, community engagement. I just feel like we could find a way to kind of add those together in some sort. Does that make sense? But yeah, at the end of the day, I think if we want to be successful, we need to get kids on grade level by the time they're hitting middle school. And I think that's where we're failing. Because once you get to middle school, it does. It goes by in the blink of an eye. And if a kid isn't prepared and engaged, and they're gonna fall off. And so I think, our biggest focus should really be on getting parents more involved. I agree with you there. And making sure that we are just back to basics with our kids, and we are getting them at grade level where they're supposed to be before we push them along, because we tend to do this, and I think every school district does this. We have so many kids. What are you going to do with a kid who hasn't hit grade level? You can't hold them back. Where are they going to go? So we push them forward, and then there are key pieces to the things that they needed to learn to move on that they never learned. And it's a bad cycle that we're setting them up for failure, and it stinks. And so let's get past this whole standardized testing like mind frame and get back to like, how do we make sure our kids are reading at grade level and they understand math at grade level, and they have a good feeling for what science is, and what some history is, like age appropriate. I don't know. I don't know how else to fix this. So
I saw member Harper, and then I'll do member Glant, and then back to member Hurd.
Thank you. I agree with the idea of setting goals, agreeing on whatever the goals are and not worrying about the rest of it as much. I mean, I do think that it would be great to have some way to, I want to trust school staff to, come up with things, but then also have an opportunity for community input on them. So I don't know what our schedule and timeline could look like for that. But I also think, maybe I do think numbers are helpful just in terms of like how are we measuring our success, as a metric. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in the goal language, but making sure that there are some metrics to just strive towards. There's no punishment for like not reaching it. And then I think I hear what Member Bowden was saying about the potential to put goals 3 and 4 together. Although I would definitely, I think they're important enough on their own to kind of stand on their own personally, particularly because I think that some of it is a little bit outside of their kind of stretch goals for the school, outside of what is like normal day-to-day stuff. And so, yeah, those are just, they're important. And then the last thing I would just say is that the piece about, agreeing on goals and then letting the metrics and the strategies flex a little bit, thinking about how we might do that, because the second that you put a document like this out into the world, it's like outdated. And so just thinking about, there's going to be constantly realities on the ground changing and us needing to adapt. And so just like wanting to be flexible in that, acknowledging that fact. So I don't know if it's a annual look at it or, yeah.
Member Glant.
Yes, I agree that it should be what I would call a living document. so that it can be, pretty precise, so that when you're looking at it, you have the most updated information. And I agree that we should have some kind of metric, so to know, to have a goal, we need to know how we're meeting that goal. And so I think that's a good idea. But I also, I know it's addressed in goal 4, but absenteeism, I think, is a big issue. I think we ought to, I don't know if that needs to be separated out from goal 4 or where it needs to be, but I think it's important enough that it should be separate somehow.
Member Hurd.
Thank you. So, excuse me, the last thing I'm going to say is that when I started to homeschool, my biggest concern was that I was going to miss some standard with my kid. Like I was going to screw him up and I was going to miss something and he would go to college and not know how to do some sort of thing. And in talking to other homeschool moms, they were like, that happens every year. Like there's standards and there's stuff that you're supposed to get to 4th grade and you don't actually get to it and it's okay. And they still go on to 5th grade and they still learn to be productive members of society. What you really need to do is if you can foster a love for learning, then you've reached your goal. And that's what we're missing. We can do that. Like I have the ability, thankfully, to do that with my children because it's just the 2 of us. And I can go in wherever their little brains want to go, whatever they're interested in. But we can do that at a district level. We can get our kids engaged. We can help them and cater to what their interests are. And if we do that, they're more likely to continue to grow in their learning and, be able to absorb more. Like if you start just a little, just give them a little, they will go. And so I'm hoping that that is something that we can start to work more towards. That would be like my number 1 goal for our district.
Yes.
And I'm not saying input is done, but I really like the idea of everyone's input. Simplify, don't make it about a statistic, not have a ton of them, make sure they make sense. I think sometimes with percentages and metrics, it actually gets scary for me because I'm like, oh dear God, how am I going to get to 82 point whatever percent? It's we want to get there, but it's not how I function either. I'm not big on the graduation rate. I want the quality of students to leave our schools with a credential that is right for them, and we can build more pathways and support kids through some challenging times. So I just wanted to say I'm really appreciative of all this feedback.
Yeah, I think my feedback would be, I do think it's important to have some, maybe measurement is the wrong word, but some acknowledgement and goal around academic success. It is a school system at the end of the day, and the trouble is, what other than a standardized test can the school system use to help students, parents, staff, us, the community, taxpayers, everyone know that it's working. They are learning things and it's working. So I'd be curious. I see maybe Member Hurd has thoughts on that, but also just this isn't to say that the standardized test thing is the right way to do it, but I do think I would want to at least I would at least want to agree on what it is we are looking to when we're looking to understand if academic success is improving. Because maybe we don't all agree on the test approach, and I don't really, there's so many issues with the standardized test kind of system. But we probably would agree generally that, kids could be learning more and better in all sorts of ways, just generally. So that is the second goal. I do feel strongly that we have something like it, even if it's not a test score goal. I would agree with that. So I guess we don't need to necessarily get into the exact specifics right now of what that would be, but I'd be curious for feedback from the administration on what alternative version of that might be. So that's one thought. I also agree. I'm fine if the goal doesn't say, increase graduation rates by 15%. and that's exactly what we're putting it at. I think having a number in mind can be very helpful. Um, but at the end of the day, I mean, if we just agree on increased graduation rates and we're still measuring that and we're still able to have a sense of moving in the right direction, I think that can still be valuable. Um, I guess thinking back to some of the earlier comments, I think from Member Jensen, I do think the increasing parent engagement, it seems like a maybe I was also kind of thinking about that. I think someone mentioned this is kind of part of the fourth goal. I guess that's sort of where I had that in my head. Again, that's a tough one to measure. I'm not sure what you put on a dashboard for that, but I think it's something worth um, considering. I'm not sure if the superintendent saw it that way when he was drafting that goal, but I took that and would like to imagine that as, you know, is the family involved in school, basically. Oh, okay. Well, great. So I guess that I think maybe we can double down on that in terms of the goal language itself. So um, just to try to recap a little bit, at least my own opinion here, and then I do think at the end of the day, we will need to move towards, you know, actually getting 4 or 5 down on paper to agree on. But I do think, you know, I would like to see, you know, something around graduation rates, something around academic success, the school safety, and the parental involvement. And my parental involvement, community involvement, whatever it may be. My sense is that from the conversation we all kind of like ideas in that range, but there might be a number of there might be different specifics in terms of how we all see it, in terms of how you're measuring academic success and so on. So maybe we need kind of a simpler second draft to discuss, I think is fair to say. Or maybe we can discuss some of that. I will say just one thing. I think one thing when we first came up with this discussion last summer, maybe, one thing I got a little stuck on whether to address or not is at that time, at least, like turnover rates, but I think more broadly, you know, staffing issues. And Member Jensen brought up, you know, teacher workload. I'm still, I'm a little unsure in terms of, you know, how we consider the means versus the ends, I suppose, where I think we want very, you know, ideally happy and successful staff. But then carrying out, you know, things like improved academic performance and better graduation and so on. So I just point that out as one I'm still a little stuck on in terms of whether we should have that as a separate thing or it kind of works into the more detailed plans that we discuss later on. But so it's talked for a little while, but I just wanted to try to recap some of my own thoughts on this. And I saw, yeah, Member Jensen and then Member Hurd, you had your hand up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple follow-up thoughts from notes I took. I guess I'm also looking for like not a huge increase in money. I think there's a lot of methods we could try that don't require, you know, a really big price tag to them that could have a lot of good impact in the district. I'm also opposed to doing anything that adds to the teacher workloads. I mean, I really cannot emphasize it. And it's not just this district. I mean, it's like everywhere in the country and everywhere in the state, really. Like the teacher workload is just insane right now. It's like juggling like 8 different bowling pins and you're just praying to God that they just fall in the right place and you hope nothing else happens. And so I just, if we're adding anything, something absolutely needs to be taken off, or if we're adding one thing, we should probably take off a few things. And also I think it might have been Member Bowden mentioned something about it, but like when we don't pass, like when children aren't held back, we just pass them along. Like when I taught 4th grade last year, I was probably teaching kids working at different levels from 1st grade up to 6th grade. So I was really teaching like 5 or 6 different grades. And that's most of the teachers at our school, the higher level you get. So, you know, unless we're going to address that problem, which I don't know if that's a district problem, it might just be a state level problem that needs to be addressed, but that is the reality that most of our teachers are working with too. So with the limited teaching time they have, the high workload, I mean, you're teaching multiple grades at the same time. So that to me really stood out as when we're thinking about workload, let's think about that. And then also like the emphasis to be put on education. Like, I think I might have talked to you about it before. How like, because I'm a sub right now, I sub over in Auburn, and over at East Auburn, which is a community school, they have like this kind of like poster up in every single room, and it has one single goal for the school. We are here to learn. And learn is, I think, capitalized, bolded, and italicized. So just something really simple like that, basic, which is common sense. I mean, but the kids, when you're a kid, you don't always understand that. And so I think a lot of the time our students will go to school and they have the idea that this is a social place we go to, might be one of the only 2 meals you get per day. It's a really, but very much a social service center is what Lewiston schools are. And I'm very proud of the good, just moral work that we do and that our staff members do. But a lot of times the students don't really see it. I go to school to learn and I get to play with my friends. I get to get my needs met, but it's more, oh, I go to this place where I get my needs met, and learning is part of the things we do. And so by emphasizing more the learning process itself, I think that'd be a pretty big help too. And kind of like what Member Hurd was saying before too, I think she was kind of alluding to it. Our goal isn't really to, make like worker bees, it's to establish lifelong learners. And anyone who graduates high school at 18 years old and doesn't, just stops learning at that point has a very hard life. So creating those lifelong learners and students, I think, should absolutely be the priority. I don't care really as much about the graduation rate as I do about that. So those are just the follow-up thoughts I had. Oh, one last thing too, just to like an idea for like setting up a goal. Maybe the goal itself could be like increase engagement. And then like the sub goals could be like among parents, students, and community members. And you can work that community part into that engagement piece. Just an idea again, just kind of throwing it out there. But thank you.
Member Hurd.
Thank you. So we talked about parent engagement and like how do we work on that, but also we were talking about like what other metrics do we have to measure like what students actually know and how much they've learned other than a standardized testing. The way that we currently measure on our children's progress reports or report cards makes 0 sense. You get a 1, 2, 3, 4, and your kid can get a 2 because the standard hasn't been taught yet. So you can't technically get a 4 because we haven't taught it yet, but the parent doesn't actually know that their child's behind. So if we go back to a regular grading, A, B, C, D, 100 through whatever, the parents actually know like, oh, wow, in reading my kid is actually at a 70, or, oh, in math my kid is actually at a 95, like they're killing it. So, and I feel like I'm a pretty smart person. I'm on the school committee. I feel like I have a little bit more there than the regular parent. And I still never, every time I went to parent teacher conference and they were like, oh, your kid's only at a 2. Well, to me, I'm like, well, what's happening? Why is my kid failing? Well, we haven't actually taught that standard yet. So we can't actually give them a 4. It makes 0 sense. Go back to the original way we always used to grade that we were all graded with when we went to school. And it will give an actual true depiction of what our kids know and where they're at.
Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To piggyback right on that, an idea I had too is like, I know the state law kind of determines how we do some of the grading, but if we created an informal, unofficial report card with all the subjects, like not just a participation grade for social studies and science, but like all the grade subjects, A through F, let the teachers have 100% discretion. It's not their official report card or anything, but it would probably be the best way to communicate how your child is doing to parents. And I think that just a simple thing like that, where we're giving teachers the discretion, could do wonders and help parents kind of understand exactly how their students are doing. Because maybe they get a 2 on a certain standard and the parents freaking out, but then they see that the kid has an A and, oh, they just couldn't achieve that standard because we haven't finished teaching it yet. So that's just an idea. I can tell you, like being a former teacher, like having that communication, I mean, that would be very easy to do. And the communication that you do with parents, especially sharing good news and concerns, I mean, that's not something that teachers would really consider like, oh, I have to do that. It's something that you'd be kind of excited to do, and really get to communicate. Because when students are struggling, a lot of times it's hard to get in touch with parents and get them to kind of understand exactly how they're struggling. So it would not be something that would add to teacher workload.
Is there any public comment on this item at this point?
Matthew Agron, Ward 4. Member Ames, thank you for asking about community schools, because I thought that was a sneaky way to sneak in the word redistricting. And I was like, congratulations, you guys are going to have all kinds of fun. Standardized testing works if you have a standardized population. We don't. And I can tell you, most teachers can tell you how their kids are doing better than any standardized testing can do. So the idea of giving a grading system where they can say, hey, Johnny's got an A, Susan's got a C, Janet's got an F in this subject, allows you to have, well, I already called out Phoenix, so I can't use him again. So, let the teachers yeah, we have to do standardized testing because that's how our funding comes. But let's not make that our priority because kids are only learning the standardized answers. And if you don't agree with the standardized answers, you're wrong. So, something else that needs to be addressed is absentee and tardyism, because that really affects not only them here, but when they hit the real world. Let me give you an example. We had an employee who came out of high school last year. They were regularly an hour late for shifts or more, and they didn't understand why that was wrong. They no longer work with us because they've not been told that that's not how the real world exists. Parent interaction. Good luck. I've been to a number of sporting events where you will see one team has an entire bleacher side full and the other team has 10 parents. And you go, but they're the home team. Why does the home team not have anyone there? It's sad, but sometimes parents just aren't there. I wish that's something we need to improve, but it's not something I don't know how to do. You do need to have some sort of number metric system in here that allows so that the public out here can say, hey, this is working and we're spending money on it and it's working, or it's not working. Why are we spending money on it? Because remember, you guys got to justify your budgets to the taxpayers. And the taxpayers, if they can't see what you're producing is working, they're not going to buy in. Other than that, really don't have anything else. And by the way, sorry I gave you the morbid comments earlier, Phoenix.
All right, thank you. So I think the next step on this, and I'm curious what you think, Superintendent Lewis, but it would be, I think, to try to consolidate a simpler draft, just focus on the goals themselves. And I know we didn't just come up with, 4 to 5 perfect sentences there, but I guess this would be a question for you. Do you feel like you've heard enough to at least approach a second draft that's just, or I shouldn't even say a second draft, a new draft that is just those goals that we can then take further action on?
I do. I think I got some good notes and I think the feedback was fairly consistent, so I should be able to bring something back.
Okay. So yeah, like I said before, I think the things that would be great to do is if we can get some further public input on that through a survey, because we did discuss that, and I have heard people actually express interest in doing that if they have the opportunity, and then vote on it at a later meeting, hopefully in March. So if there are no other thoughts on that, no vote needed at this time at this meeting. So I think we will move on to the next item. And as I mentioned, this will kind of blend together. So this next item is future agenda structure planning. I can start this one unless you want to. Yeah. So again, that's kind of bleeding together from what we just discussed. The suggestion would be that once we have the goal set, 4 or 5, we plan to do about 1 meeting a month that is focused around that item. And part of that, and when I say that, I mean, we're working into the details a little more in terms of, we hear from the staff about we're doing this or this, that thing around pathways to graduation, or, these things related to increasing graduation. Part of the reason for that is so that the administration has advanced time to prepare and think through these things since they're larger goals. But the other piece is that as items come up from the committee, we kind of know, hey, we're going to be talking about, okay, something has come up recently, to use a real example, around the math curriculum. And we can say, well, we know we're going to have a meeting, let's say in May or June, that's going to be focused all about kind of our academic curriculum approach. And so we can say, for a more general topic that's not, immediately urgent, we know that there's kind of a signpost where we can consolidate some of those items. So that is something a little different than we've done before. We would still have the regular meeting business. We would still have items that come up. But it would at least give us a chance, and the public a chance, to know that, hey, we're going to be working through these kind of top line items over the months. So that was kind of the first part of this agenda item. I just wanted to share that basically proposal for future agendas with you all. Any reaction to that? Okay, great. The second piece, I just wanted to somewhat clear the decks in terms of if there are any agenda items that people feel like we've been hanging on to, have not come up, but have been brought up, that you want to be sure are on the list for future agenda item conversations. And I say this just because, of course, we always ask at every meeting what future agenda items you have. But I know, over the months, there have been things that have come up that might not have made it on. And just as we're planning the agendas, if there's anything, especially that's not going to nicely fit into those goals, but, there's something, more outside that, if there's anything you feel you want to be sure kind of is on the list as we're preparing those agendas. You can bring it up now. You're welcome to email me at any time.
I'm going to say it out loud
Yeah,
so the
please.
public can hear it. I
Yeah.
asked, should we email you or should we bring that up right now?
Got it. Yes, you can email me or bring it up right now. You're welcome to email me at any time, I should say. But please do, bring things up now if there are things at top of mind. Yes, Member Bowden.
Well, the one thing that I think I have brought up consistently numerous times over the years that I've been on the school committee that we've never actually had a discussion about is how much recess time our kids get. And it even turned into a student showed up and talked about it not that long ago at the podium during public comment. So that to me, I think is one of the most crucial things for our elementary age kids is to have that time to be out at recess. And what are we giving them versus, what they need for recess time every single day, especially when we're talking about kindergartners, first graders, second graders. Their attention spans are so little. And I just think there should be a lot of transitions with outdoor fresh air, free play. So that is something that I don't even know what that looks like when we have that discussion, but I've asked for it numerous times and I would really like to see us dig into that a little bit.
Thank you. Yes, and that is the kind of thing that I wanted to bring up now. It's just something that doesn't neatly fit into these other overarching things. Yes, Member Eames.
Do we already have a running list? I mean, do you have a list that we're adding to, or are you starting fresh?
I just have notes that I've taken over the months, but and recess was on there, but it's helpful to just kind of hear directly from you now, just what is at the top of your minds, just to be clear what should be on the list if it's not. And it's not like a speak now or forever hold your peace situation. I just want to make sure we have the opportunity to make sure lingering items are on there. Member Harper.
Are we also doing the agenda item that is future agenda items?
You know what? Let's just do it all now. We might as well.
Do it all now.
Yeah. It's on the agenda, so I'll have to come back to it, but it's all kind of related. So let's just discuss agenda items. Thank you for, yeah.
I can, if Member Hurd wants to say something, I can gather my my list.
Okay, Member Hurd.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, and I don't know if there's a policy for this or whatnot, but just to make sure, especially we're coming up to budget season, and this would kind of fall in there a little bit, but I just want to make sure as a district, there is some sort of policy or procedure, something that requires our district to go out to bid RFP for any and all services. I don't care what it is. It can be from paper to milk to floor wax. I do not care, but I want to make sure that as a district, we are annually, or I don't know what that looks like, but I think that we need to have something in place that's holding our district accountable for going out and getting the best price possible on all of the goods that we consume in our district.
Okay, thanks. Actually, let me just ask a quick question about that, because I think there is some policy about that. Do you happen to know if that's soon in the cycle or?
That was one that we actually reviewed just recently. I can give you the exact.
Okay, should remember that. That's okay if you don't.
And
have
it
the
was
exact
along
date,
those
but-
lines. It was to go out to bid and be competitive.
Yep.
Okay, so we can follow up on that and see what the right way to.
I just want to make sure there's actually, you know what I mean? Like, does it say every year? Does it say every 2 years? Does it say, like, I feel like there should be an actual timeline, not like, yes, the district has to go out to bid. That's very vague. Like, we're not, someone could say, oh, well, we've been out to bid 10 years ago and we fulfilled our obligation by actually going out to bid.
Okay. Is there anything? Oh yeah, Member Harper.
So in terms of future agenda items, we heard earlier today someone requesting more information about district transfers and the criteria and discussion of like how that is done equitably. So I just wanted to bring it up as something that maybe we could get an education about.
Okay.
And then I brought it up somewhat recently, so hopefully it's on the list, just a presentation around school safety and particularly with a emphasis on the preventative measures that are being taken, to engage the whole school community and safety. And then,
If you don't mind, if I could interrupt you for 1 second, because that might be an example of something where if everyone's all right with it, if we do have a goal that's around improving school safety, we kind of put that into that conversation. So it might be a couple months until we get to it in that case. But if there's something more specific and more urgent, then we could have something earlier. So does that make sense?
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think with gun violence in the community, it feels like an urgent topic. But yeah, I mean, I agree. It is like it's clearly nestled under one of like goal 3, I think, around trauma, and safety. So, but.
Did you have another one?
Yeah. So, we've heard several public comments related to the impacts that federal immigration enforcement has continued to have on our community and our students. And so I'd like the school committee to consider a resolution that affirms the district's commitment to ensure that all members of the school community's constitutional rights are respected, and maybe just also reaffirms like the district leadership to continue the support activities that are already in place, as well as, consider new visible, tangible supports for students and staff. And I'm happy to, collaborate with yourself or however that gets onto the agenda.
Okay, yeah, we can follow up on that one. Just to sort out just in my time here, we haven't done a lot of resolves, even though I mentioned just not that long ago that maybe the goals thing should be structured as a resolve, but we can follow up on how to approach
Bring
that
it
as an
forward.
agenda thing. Yes, Member Heard.
So in thinking kind of a couple weeks ago, I feel like kind of what you sent out to the community about like what our goals were and kind of where the school falls on that, like I feel like that's kind of a resolve. Like I feel like you kind of already shared about what the district is doing, what we will continue to do, what we have done. I feel like those are all things that you've already shared out. And I mean, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't I don't know if there's something different that you're looking for than what he's already shared to the community about like what our responsibilities are and like kind of what our limitations are around this type of stuff.
Yeah, Member Harper, do you mind? Is
Sure.
there something different?
Yeah, yeah, I think it would be something different. I mean, I think what we've heard in a number of comments from community members is that, students and staff are still hurting. There's still impacts. There's like, I think the district has, put out some good safety protocols, and it seems like there could be an additional additional layer of school safety affirmation that could be really helpful for folks. And there could be more, I think there could be more that the district could be doing, as a number of community members have advocated for. And I know that we have legal constraints in certain respects of that, and I'm, happy to make sure that we're abiding by those.
Okay. Any other items that people want to bring up now? Okay, and just to say something I didn't mention earlier, the other piece, in terms of more long-term work to be looking at, I do think it's come up here and there, but the big kind of enrollment question, the building question, all these things that kind of fit together in terms of the future of district enrollment and grade levels and all that. We've kind of brought it up here and there, but I think it might be worth penciling in later in the year, particularly before the next round of the LCIP conversation gets going. So we're, maybe making clearer statements around that. That's another thing that I think will be on the kind of long-term needs in terms of something that we need to have a meeting about. Remember, Glant, were you going to say something?
Yeah, on what you just said, reminds me of CDS. That is coming up. I can't remember the actual dates, but that is coming up, and we have to do that. So
Yes.
how are we going to fit that in?
Yeah.
Budget-wise, space-wise, everything, staff-wise.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely part of it. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Member Harbor.
Sorry, can we just spell out the acronyms? LCIP,
Child
CDS.
Development Services.
This is
Is that right?
Development services.
Okay.
That is, what is LCIP? That's
Lewiston Capital Improvement Plan. Yeah. Basically the bonding plan for city funds. Yeah. Were you going to add something?
Just LCIP's $50,000 or more capital improvement bonding plan. So
yes. Right. Okay. Member Eames.
Senator Rotundo said that the CDS is fully funded. I don't believe her. I am wondering if there's something we can do to assure that that's true. She said that it's up to the superintendents of every district to make their case to Augusta. Have you done it? Do we know what we need? Have we made our case?
I guess in different realms, I've made my case, which is why we don't currently do it, because funding the staffing for it and the services that are needed, there is a different funding mechanism for that that's better than some of the existing structures. So I give credit to the appropriations team for that work, but it doesn't pay for lights, heat, building space, plowing, sanding. So it's really about services provided and associated costs. So there's some gaps in the funding, at least from where I look at it. If you have the space already and it's underutilized, some districts are taking advantage of filling that space and having revenue come from it, but we're not in that situation.
Yeah, I think that.
So we need to talk about it as an agenda item. That's my point.
Right. Okay. Any public comment on this agenda item in terms of future meeting planning? Okay, great. We're going to move right along to receive and potentially vote on the LPS Administrators Association contract for 2026, 2027.
I don't have a ton to say other than there's a list of names in your packet of folks that are up for renewal. We have made some tough decisions on a few people, but given it's a personnel matter, we won't be bringing that up in public session. I think we have a solid group of leaders that are prepared to continue to take on the challenges of bringing up our kids.
Do you mind just saying a word, both to remind me and maybe for the new members, why this is voted on differently?
Yeah, so this is, there's some statute around when administrators get renewed or non-renewed, but there's also language in the contract. So we shoot for March 1st, and today being actually the 2nd. We work with the association on what renewals will be and what renewals will not be. So that's the reason for the timing of this right now.
Well, any questions from, Member Bowden?
Sorry, I can't really ask. I mean, I have a specific question, but I can't really ask it, so I don't know what to do with that. And so I'm just sitting here sort of w- wondering, like, it's kind of strange that this is the way that the way
So
that we're
we're-
privy to information, but we can't actually talk about the information, but we're voting on the information, but I have a question on the information.
I would say this, executive session rules require that personnel matters be discussed in an
I'm aware.
executive session that people get invited to.
Yeah.
And so if it's within that scope, we would not be able to talk about it in open session.
Then what do I do? Do I
I mean,
just,
might I suggest we could treat it similar to any of the personnel agendas where we just request that it be set aside. Correct? I mean,
I don't know the question. So
well, that's the issue. If you think, would it be worth setting it aside until we can schedule an executive session to discuss it? And I would say, don't let the logistics dissuade you. I
it's
mean,
just
if it's a
tricky.
concern-
It's just tricky. It is a concern. It's just a concern, that I just want to have like cleared up, and if it's cleared up, I'm good, but I just don't know how to ask it, and it seems more of a pain for me to even ask it than to just pass it through. But I'm like gratefully with that over here. So
Counselor Harriman?
I just wanted to add that these personnel decisions are really more made by administration, and we kind of, I realize, I think it's statute that says that the school committee has to sign off on any hires and terminations, but we're not really the ones doing the day-to-day kind of decisions. Just as a point to put out there. But I understand if people have questions too.
Could I just ask, because you mentioned the March 1st thing, is there any legal issue if we don't vote on this tonight? Or contractual issue?
yes, but I don't think it'll be a problem. How's that? I think it could wait. I think the decisions that were made have some footing. I think if we change decisions, that will be problematic.
Were you about to say something, Member Bowden?
yeah, I was just gonna like to what Member Harriman just said. Yes, but also, you know, as school committee members, when we hear things, when we see things, I have a question, and so this is hard for me. I'm just having a hard time. I guess I just gotta trust you, right? Is that?
I would
Here's
hope
my-
so.
Well, I do trust you. I just something is lingering that I just feel like needs to be answered, but
Here's what I would say, I think right now, I think it would be uncomfortable, certainly for the public, if we just suddenly, knowing that there's now publicly at least a question, I think to not address it at all and just to vote immediately, especially, the other thing is, for fair reasons, but this was something that, the list also came late. That wasn't any, issue. It just was the timing of this. So, yeah, uh, I might prefer if there isn't a contractual issue that we give the time to address it and we vote on it at the next meeting unless there is a problem with that.
So contractually, I think it could be grieved. I think the folks on this list could say, I thought I would know my standing and now I don't, and I don't know why. So I think that could be problematic. I would also say that unless there's something really egregious that I'm unaware of, we would have to have an executive session. The person would have to be invited and able to speak to it. And that would be kind of like a personnel inquiry, which would really need to be done by me or a human resources department. So I think it complicates things. If I'm one of these employees being renewed, it definitely complicates it for those folks.
I mean, it is, yeah, I mean, the rest of us don't necessarily know the question. So member Bowden, I mean, what do you have a sense of whether this is worth waiting a week?
I would also add that if there's something really pressing as it relates to someone's employment, it could be researched anyway, and there are different processes, whether it's termination or investigations or different tiered approaches to whether someone's renewed or not. There's still processes for someone to have progressive discipline or termination hearings, things of that. So I don't know any idea what your question is, so I can't really speak to it.
Member Heard?
So we know as a district, our staff have a probationary period when they're first hired on in our district. And then this spreadsheet potentially reflects some of that, but does it reflect what year in their probationary period they're in, or just what the amount, like the longevity of the probationary period? Do you get what I'm saying? So like, let's just say, for instance, our probationary period is 3 years. I'm just saying, I'm trying not to be actual, like, but I'm just saying, okay? So some of these staff members would have a 3 next to them because that's the total number, or they would have a 1 because that's where they're in, or they would have a 2 because that's where they're in their probationary period. That's what I'm asking for on clarification on that. Do you catch what I'm putting down? So yes, I'm just asking, like, is that where they're at? Yeah, they have 2 years left, or they're in the last year of their probationary
So
period, or?
folks with a 2 would be going into their second year, which would be probationary.
Thank you. That's what I was asking. Thank you.
Member Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, there's nothing like in particular on this that really stands out to me as an issue. I just more or less the just concerns of getting it today and voting on it, now. I haven't really had a chance, this afternoon to go over this, so I'm just honestly looking at it for the first time right now. And if I'm saying that at a meeting, it's usually a rule of thumb that I shouldn't vote on it. And I imagine this is made public as well, so the public probably hasn't had much of a chance. I mean, I don't want this like wait and then have like some political issue come up with someone's job. I mean, this is employment. We only have one employee and everyone else works for him. So I don't want to create a scenario where someone's job gets, becomes a political discussion for the community. At the same time, I just would rather have a little bit more time to look over this, if I'm making any sense. So I guess if I had to say my preference, it would be to wait. I know for a while, I don't think we had administrator contracts. And if we have something in there now that could pose an issue, I mean, that's something that should be considered. But my preference would be to wait if we can.
It's in the packet.
Yeah. Do any other members of the committee want to weigh in at this time? Councilor Harriman?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that these decisions are really personnel decisions by administration. And yes, we do vote on them, but they're not so much our decisions to make, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. And I do appreciate Superintendent Langlis's point about if people have to wait another couple of weeks on this, it can put them in a tough spot as far as just knowing whether they're being renewed. And yeah, so I think it could put a lot of people in a tough spot.
Member Hawkins?
If I'm hearing things correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is really more of this is what Jake and the administration have told us what they would like to see happen. It's been negotiated. It's ready to go. This is just our saying, yes, we agree that Jake and his side has done their due diligence. Is that?
So yes, but also just structurally. So let's say hypothetically someone had a concern tonight about an individual. Well, there's a process for that. This isn't that process. This is renewal. All the information here is based on employees. The numbers you see are based on their contracts and their date of hire. And the renewal is just to renew where they're at. And again, there are some folks not on this list. That was my decision from that employment process. I would encourage an approval tonight, and if there's something out there I need to look into, I am certainly going to do that.
That's exactly what my next question was going to be. So, yeah.
So what would members like to do? There certainly would need to be a motion. My understanding is it would be on all or none, regardless of if there's particular concern. It is obviously an awkward one, given that if law requires the committee to vote directly on these, presumably there's a reason for that. I'm not sure if there's a specific history behind that, but that does kind of put us in the situation where we certainly can vote on it tonight. There's no procedural reason why we can't. But at the same time, if members have a reason to wait, then we can do that as well. And that could cause other problems, but we are here and voting on these things for a reason. So we would need a motion if the committee wants to go in that direction, but it is up to the committee. If people would prefer to wait, then we can wait. Councilor Harriman.
May I make a motion at this time?
You're allowed to, yes.
So I would move that we approve the LPS Administrators Association contracts for 2026 to 27 as presented.
Okay. Would anyone like to second the motion? You're
second.
Okay. Member Hawkins is seconding the motion. Is there any public comment on this agenda item?
Matthew Agron, Ward 4. Okay, you already have one person up here who has a question that needs to be answered in an executive session. My first question is, why is this not being done in an executive session and coming out and voting after said session? The second thing is, we had Luke Jensen just say, you guys got this today. Little quick, short notice. And it was supposed to be ready for the 1st of the year, 1st of March. We're already late. These are little things that need to be looked at. I think where there are questions that Ms. Bowden can't get answered here because we're in a public session, you guys need to wait and do this after an executive session where she can ask her question, where it can be answered, and then you could vote on it. Be very simple. But you guys scheduled it for a public meeting where you can't talk about anything. Makes it kind of difficult for questions to be asked. You guys only got it today, from what Mr. Jenkins said. So maybe you wait 1 week. Have a nice night.
All right, thank you. Comments from members of the committee on the motion? Yes, Member Bowden.
I'm just going to recuse myself because I don't feel comfortable voting on it.
So my understanding is typically recusal and abstention would have to be for a particular reason related to conflict of interest and things like that.
Well, I mean, I have a question that is going unanswered, and that's if it's the committee's will to vote on it, that's fine. I just don't feel comfortable voting on it. So to me, it's a conflict of interest. I'm fighting something here on this one, so.
Okay. Are there other comments from members of the committee? Yeah, Member Hawkins.
So if we vote this through tonight, and then we do have an executive session and Janet asks her question and we discuss it, is there anything that says that what we voted tonight, one section can't be
Changed.
So I'm gonna go back to like the anchor of this process, that the school committee employs me, and then all the other employees are my supervision, or I supervise them. So executing these contract renewals isn't something that just changes in an executive session where there's an inquiry. There would have to be due process. There'd have to be an investigation. You'd have to have a pre-termination hearing if we get to that place. That would have to be approved by the committee, and then a termination hearing would have to happen. All of which those pieces was people would get to be invited to. So having an executive session tonight or another night to talk about this, there's a series of steps in between those two things. Including having an executive session tonight and talking about people without them having an opportunity to be here and be present and have representation would be a violation of their contract and labor law. And so even if we waited a week, depending on what the inquiry is, it may not even be timely in that sense. But again, I have no idea what it is, but I would also say employees have rights, both in their contract and in due process. And so if someone has a question or inquiry, today, which sounds like Member Bowden does, I don't know what that inquiry is. We haven't investigated whatever that is. And it's in process, there's a layer between the two on purpose. And so anything that comes out of whatever you decide to do now would potentially turn into due process that would need multiple meetings and further inquiry around one person or persons. I don't know. Again, where this is not a supervision meeting. This is not a supervision vote. This is a vote on my recommendation is we approve these contracts moving forward at this time. And again, from your question of process, if something has happened with somebody on this list that we look into, there are due process steps to walk away from that commitment, that contract.
Could you just clarify that point? Because I think that this might make a difference for me and maybe public as well. And just that if we vote against the slate, no individual or the slate as a whole are suddenly fired. Like you're saying, there is due process for someone who, even this is about renewing their contract going forward generally, but it does not mean that they can just be let go immediately with no further due process. Is that what you're saying?
I guess it's both things. So I think it erodes the trust in the individuals that feel like they're being renewed tonight. But from a due process perspective, there's mechanisms for either direction as far as someone challenging that from a grievance perspective, but also due process for if we have an employee, if we have concerns about their performance or something that they've done, there is absolutely due process for looking into that, if that's what you're asking.
Yes. Here's what I'm going to suggest, and members of the committee can take it or leave it. I think my feeling at least would be, I would like to vote through personally the slate as a whole, but I think it would be appropriate at this point to set up, despite all the issues that were just raised logistically, I think it would be appropriate to schedule an executive session to at least address what the question is. As much of a pain or as uncomfortable as that may be, even if it turns out not to be worth it at all, I think because this has come up, both for the other 8 of us to know what the question even is, and also for members of the public to know that we're at least, that we are taking things like that seriously, and we're not just going to, blank slate, continue employment regardless of any questions that come up. I might suggest that approach, which might not be ideal. I'm not sure how the superintendent feels about that. But I think that might be at least a way to make sure that everyone who there are no questions about that have come up so far, we can kind of get through and no issues there, but make sure that we do take seriously whatever issue has come up, even if it turns out to be a non-issue. Member Harper?
I just want to say that any committee member at any point in time who has concerns about an employee can share them with me, and we look into those, obviously. So it doesn't require an executive session to share a concern or question with me. But I do think if we're going to get into a whole committee conversation about any individual as an employee, they 100% have a right to have notice and to be here with representation.
Member Harper.
I feel comfortable voting on this tonight. Personally, I also understand and want to take seriously any concern. I think it sounds like I'm also very curious. You mentioned like what is the law? Like if we can't ask questions with it sounds like if there is a particular concern about a particular individual, then it has to go through like a separate grievance process. And if we were to do like if we were to set up it sounds like whatever it would be might have to actually just go through whatever process that is. So I would offer maybe we vote on this item tonight and then we get a little bit more clarity maybe about why this committee and like what the purpose is of us voting on this if they're not our direct employees. And then also really encourage, to Member Bowden to reach out to district leadership about this thing. And if it does require a school committee and like going through that grievance process, then so be it. But yeah, that was what I would offer.
Okay, Member Hurd.
Thank you. So I am okay with voting this through to not create more work and worry and whatever throughout our district. But I will be very candid and say that the fact that this came late, I feel like I don't feel like I was able to like, if I had questions about certain things in this packet, do I have enough time to reach out to you with questions for that? And so I know I joke with you a lot of the times that I'm not calling you anymore because you never answer or actually call me back. And I know you're running a ginormous district and you have a bajillion things on your plate. But at the same time, the committee, in this instance, like Janet has a question, has to be able to come to you with a question. The rest of the committee has to be able to come with you with a question. And so, again, I'm just trying to be very candid here, but I'm saying like, I'm not telling you have to make yourself and drop everything of what you're doing the second one of our names pops up on your phone. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like, we also have to be able to, whether it's you or Karen or Bill or Sue, we need to be able to have this conversation with somebody in that instance. And I feel like sometimes it is hard if we have a question or something's coming up. Sometimes it is hard to be able to get, whether it's never really face to face, but to get you on the phone to have a conversation about something that's going on. So I'm fine approving the thing as a whole, but I also think that communication also is a big thing. And I know you're really busy and I get it. And like I said, I don't want you to drop everything, but to avoid this, whatever this is that's happening right now, is there I know everyone's busy, but is there like if we can't get Jake and we have a really important question that we need to ask, like who's the next person to reach out to?
I would say Karen, but I would
If
also,
Karen's
I would
really
also
busy,
say
who's the next person to ask?
Bill, or then Sue, or even the HR department, Susanna Galan, if need be. But I will also say, and through numerous correspondence, whether it's phone calls, text, or email, pretty strong record of getting back to people and hearing complaints and concerns. So just for what that's worth, because I feel like part of what you just said sounded like I never call people back or correspond with them. So I'm a little worried about that being out there because I really do try to do that.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying like if things come in the packet late, is there adequate enough time for members to reach out to you or Karen or Bill or Sue with questions is what I'm saying. And so that's a challenge. So how do we mitigate that so this doesn't happen?
Yeah, I would just say people would have to reach out. And I know this came late. We had someone on vacation who I needed to have a conversation with. And prior to that conversation, it didn't feel right to put that list out. So, and that happened this afternoon. Okay, I got back from the vacation, so sorry.
When I saw Member Bowden has a hand, then I think we need to call the question and keep moving. So Member Bowden.
I'm sorry, just real quick. I just want to say, I didn't get to see this list until I sat down here tonight. Because I worked a full day today, came straight here. Then I saw that. Like I saw it in the agenda and I was like, oh, okay, I should probably look at this before we sit down here tonight. I didn't have time to ask you the question that I wanted to ask you. It really is not that deep. It's really not that big of a deal. I don't think it needs an executive session, but it's a question that I just do, I'm gonna abstain. I just don't feel comfortable voting because I have a lingering question that I would like answered, but this is not the time or the place. I can't ask it. I can't ask it in a public session. So I'm just going to quietly abstain while everybody else votes. And I'm not sad if it goes through. It's fine. It's fine. It's really not a huge deal. It's just enough that I have to live with it. So that's all.
Order. I don't think we can recuse ourselves unless there's a financial conflict of interest. Otherwise, you, I think just,
Abstaining.
yeah, abstaining, I mean, yeah. I don't think our rules allow that.
So that is my understanding as well, and that is why I brought it up. How about this? It's getting late. I'm going to say, just give me 60 seconds because I remember seeing this in a policy before, and let's just pull that up. Just a quick break. Please don't leave the tables because we're going to vote, and then okay, so I'm just going to read this line here. Abstentions are intended for situations where a member may have a direct or indirect pecuniary, being financial, right, interest in the matter being voted on. A member will not be allowed to abstain because they're indecisive. That might sound bad, but I think it just means lacking information, including that. So if a member needs more clarification before they vote, they must ask for more deliberation. So it's a catch-22, but I do think it does seem to be saying that abstentions are only for
So
financial.
So I don't have the free will to not vote on this, is what you're saying.
That's there. It's just abstention. There isn't a separate recusal piece.
Recusal is not the vote itself, it's just stepping away from the
Councilor Harriman.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that you can't really force somebody to vote on something either. Like it's really a question for, if someone decides not to vote on something and they don't have a financial conflict of interest, that's really between them and their constituents as to whether they
that's right.
were seen as dodging a vote or something like that.
That's right.
And I think this is really a genuine instance where someone does not feel comfortable voting on something and we can't force people to vote.
Okay, Member Jensen.
I'll be abstaining as well then.
Okay. I think we just need to call the roll. Someone, again, just with procedural stuff, the way, if somebody does take an issue with the abstention and they believe it's outside of policy, you can call a point of order. We can vote on that. I don't know if anyone feels so strongly as to need to do that for any abstentions tonight. So I would suggest that we just call the roll and we move on with it. And for this, I would suggest we do need to actually properly call the roll, which I didn't do earlier. And so for that, I would ask the superintendent to call the roll, starting with Member Glant. Member Glant. Please.
Yes.
Member Hurd,
Yes.
Member Hawkins,
Yes.
Member Harper,
Yes.
Member Eames,
Yes.
Member Bowden,
Abstain.
Member Jensen,
Abstain.
and Chair McLaughlin.
Yes.
And Councilor Harriman. And sorry, go back around. Councilor Harriman.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes 7 in favor and 2 abstentions. I need to put that policy on the rotation for consideration too. We're going to move right along to item number 14, to receive and potentially vote on the 2026-2027 school calendar.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we do have a motion from Member Glant and a second from Member Bowden, but we are going to hear from Karen Paquette.
Whoever that lady is at the end of the day. It's okay. It's okay. It's late. All I wanted to share was, again, the calendar went through the process of being shared with our region for LRTC. Our association also had an opportunity to look at that. There was definitely some things that we needed to work through with the region in terms of common days. And we have done that, and we are in compliance with this draft that we bring to you today.
Okay, any comments, questions from the committee? Member Hurd.
Sorry, I'm gonna make this super quick, but I say it every year. I think the 2-hour early release and the whatever days, I've said this before, like they're right back to each other, like back to back. And it looks like they've been spread out over a couple of the months. So I do appreciate that. But again, and I know we have to keep within similar days. So it is kind of tricky, but I do appreciate you trying to it does look like spread them out a little bit, because what I had said in the past was that they're falling really close to each other and it's hard to get any like traction with learning and then parents and stuff. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item? Yes.
Sorry. Hi. Hi, my name is Jay Rich. I am a multilingual teacher at McMahon and the vice president of the Lewiston Education Association. The beginning of the school year is such a hopeful and exciting time for schools. Long before our students walk into our doors, teachers are already there, setting up classrooms, writing names on folders, organizing supplies, and carefully putting together bulletin boards. Each small detail to make students feel safe, welcome, and excited to learn on their very first day. But those spaces don't come together by accident, and I'm sure the educators on our committee would agree. They come together because our educators invest their time and talents into making classrooms places where students feel that they belong. To make that possible, our teachers need time. The Lewiston Education Association is asking that some of the time at the beginning of the school year be set aside for teachers to do that work. Providing a reasonable amount of classroom preparation time helps ensure that when students arrive in late August, they walk into welcoming and engaging spaces that our students deserve. Thank you, and I appreciate your time and
Okay, thank you. Any comments from Councilor Herman?
Could I just ask, the August 24th and 25th are not labeled, but they are green, which seems to be a teacher workshop, teacher exchange. Can you just speak to that?
I can, yes, those are that. I do apologize. That should be coded on there on the key for the 24th and 25th, our teacher workshop days. So students would start on the 26th. Sorry for that.
Is there time during those days for the setup that was just referred to in public comment?
So the schedule for those days hasn't not been planned. Last year we did have a third workshop day at the beginning of the year. And with the common days, that didn't work for us this year. Common days within the region didn't work for the schedule. So we definitely will consider some time on the 24th and 25th and look at those schedules for teacher time to work in classrooms.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just one quick add. We did pitch the 21st of August, but there was a lack of interest in coming in on the Friday before that first full week. So we did try to tease that out. But we do want to be mindful of teacher classroom time on the 24th and 25th.
Okay, Member Jensen.
I guess I more or less answered my question. I was just kind of curious why we weren't able to give teachers that time. Like my experience last year, I didn't even get a key card that worked and had like orientation, all that. And it took me, I was a little bit behind my peers getting my classroom set up. So I didn't know if there was a reason for that not being in the schedule, or if it's like a money issue or just a timing situation.
It's a little bit of both. I mean, any day that we have all of our teachers here is a $250,000 plus commitment for the day. And so that's part of it. But last year we did that Friday before, and it was like the nicest day of the summer. And so everybody had to come to work and they were like, why? So I think that's what deterred people from wanting to do that Friday before. Of course, this year when we didn't book it, if this stays the same, that'll be the day that it's pouring rain and everybody wants to be at work. But we did look at that window as what else could we do. We also looked at pushing the 26th out. And then as a region, with law, we can only have 5 dissimilar days in the calendar unless we have a waiver. Waivers are hard to get. We actually have one for Eid. So that's been renewed annually. I anticipate to be renewed again, but they do push back on other days that are waivered. And the regional calendar is based on the 5 schools around us having access to the technical center. So if we have too many dissimilar days, kids miss their technical classes. And so that's why there's a limit of 5 days.
Any other comments on this? Okay, I believe it was moved by member Gallant, seconded by member Bowden. So let's call the roll again, starting with member Gallant.
Yes.
Right, and superintendent should do that.
I don't mind if you do it.
No, no,
Yes.
please.
Member Hurd,
Yes.
member Hawkins,
Yes.
Ms. Hopper,
Yes.
member Eames,
Yes.
member Bowden,
Yes.
member Jensen,
Yes.
member McLaughlin,
Yes.
and Councilor Hammond.
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is report from the school committee chair. The only thing I have to share is, oh, excuse me. Paper scattered around here. So I was asked to share, this will come over email as well, but the schedule for the graduating seniors that is relevant to the school committee members is on May 14th is the top 10 breakfast at 8:30 a.m. I believe that will be here again. May 14th. And then graduation will be on June 5th with a rain date of June 7th. That is at 6:30 p.m. I believe it's going to be outside again. So we'll get this over email as well, but they just wanted me to share that with you all now so you can start planning. That is all I have to share for now. So next up is the report from the school superintendent.
So a few things. We've been monitoring attendance, obviously, since the uptick in immigration enforcement. Attendance levels have seemed to have returned during the school day. I did get an inquiry about after-school programming. I've just started to look into more of that, but the programs I've spoken to so far say that their attendance has returned to what it was before. I wouldn't say that's conclusive yet because I'm still digging into that. Today we had a guest. The Commissioner of Education came, visited Farwell as part of the Read to Me challenge this year. She read to a couple of different groups of a couple hundred kids. So that was good. Unified basketball has been something a lot of us have really enjoyed. If you've yet to go see them play, you should check that out. That is where our kids who have intellectual and some limited physical abilities, they play basketball against other schools who also have kids that have different challenges, and they have regular ed peers that kind of coach play, but they don't shoot and score. So it's a really wonderful thing to see. If you get a chance, check that out. Budget work is nonstop right now. We'll be ready for next week for sure. Our Student Resource Center has been doing a lot of work lately, especially in and around some of the different things that have come up in our community. We've also been gifted a donation to help extend some of those resources. And so that's being put to full use. We've also been sharing out more information about the existing therapeutic opportunities for staff, as some have mentioned just a lot of stress. And so we've been sharing adult SEL strategies. We've been sharing the benefits trust information, what have you. But certainly some challenging times. And then last Thursday, there was a screening of a film called Second Responders, which was a nicely done film at through the Bates media program that talked about kids returning to school following the mass shooting and what that was like for adults and community and what have you. So that was a well done piece. I don't know what their plan is for pushing that out, but the film does exist. That's all from me right now.
All right, thank you. Any pressing questions for the superintendent on any of that? No, okay. Next up is the report from the city council representative.
Yes, so city council meets tomorrow evening. We have a workshop at 6 o'clock on the new garbage collection system that will be rolling out. I believe it's later this year. Moving from in much of the town, moving from rear loading trucks to an automated side loading truck, so the operator can stay in the truck. It's safer and less injurious and requires fewer people. So that's at 6. The regular meeting's at 7. We have the second reading of the moratorium on lot rent increases for mobile home parks, second reading on establishing a standing public safety committee, transitioning from an ad hoc committee. We have at our last meeting, we passed an emergency ordinance regarding municipal employees interacting with federal immigration enforcement. And tomorrow we have the first reading of a standard non-emergency ordinance because emergency ordinances expire after a certain amount of time. We also have, you might have seen in the newspaper, an order where we are considering a financial guarantee on a sale of the Colisee to a new owner. And we also have a resolution. It was on our last agenda, but there were some questions about it, so it's been moved up to this week. A resolution directing an assessment of needs and financial burdens of people affected by the October 25th mass shooting. And I will attempt to answer any questions people have, if there are any. Member Hurd.
I don't really have a question, just that a reminder, our high school hockey teams practice and play at the Colisee. Under the current agreement, Milltown Sports has a 1-year lease until 2027. But what they're looking to do is hopefully purchase to make renovations and add a bunch of different options for our community, like indoor turf fields and practice rinks and all of the things. So if you can go tomorrow, it's agenda item number 6. I will be there. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on that item.
Okay. All right, let's keep moving along then. The next item is any school committee community announcements. Member Bowden.
I just have one. Speaking of hockey, the boys hockey team is supposed to play tomorrow night in Portland at the Cross Insurance Arena. And depending on that game, is whether or not they go to the States. However, there's going to be some bad weather, so they switched tomorrow's night's game to Wednesday night at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
At the Cross Insurance Arena. Yes, that's why I'm announcing it. They switched it. So, big game if you can make it down to Portland to support the boys.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the list is any future agenda items. And so next meeting is going to be a budget meeting, but any pressing agenda items that didn't come up before to add to the list? No. Okay, great. So next up is to enter into executive session to conduct student A disciplinary hearing in accordance with Title 20A, Section 1001, Subsection 9,
So moved.
etc.
Second.
Okay, moved by Member Harper, seconded, no, sorry, Member Bowden. Seconded by Member Hurd. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, it is unanimous.